Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It's Thursday, Week 16. Time to preview all of the Week 16 NFL action. We're back in normal attire.
Not Bad Santa / Merlin.
Merlin?
Yeah.
I was Elf yesterday.
And Elf.
You were Santa.
Yeah.
We had fun. We had fun on the Christmas episode. If you haven't seen it yet, I do suggest you go to YouTube. We had some fun with the show yesterday. We appreciate everybody, their comments, the interaction, too. We had great interaction with the YouTube chat, answered some Christmas-related questions. But today, it's all business because we got a 16-game slate here, Sam, and we're gonna get into it. You ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
Anything else at the top that we need to remind people?
Yes, obviously, we need to remind people that we need their help. We are up for an award. The award, we became a finalist. We asked people for clips to submit. The clips are actually posted on the website, and they're funny. So we made a finalist, 2024 finalist for the Best American Football Podcast, and it's an open vote. It's a public vote, which means we can rig it, which means we need people to go out there and vote for us. The link will be in the description of the show. It'll be there on YouTube. It'll be there on the audio version. It's also my pinned tweet. If you go to @PFF_Sam, you can find it there. On phone, it's not great. The UI or whatever, the website doesn't work that great on the phone, but it works like a dream on the desktop. So if you click the link on your computer, go through, vote for us. We would very much appreciate it.
Let me hijack the pod already. It might be a good time to tell this story. When I was in Fresno, AAA, 5 of my teammates, they had a fan vote for which of those teammates, I've told the story on the show before, but which of those teammates would get their own T-shirt night for the Fresno Grizzlies. And my roommate, Gino, was one of the finalists. And he was upset that one of the other finalists had 12 brothers and sisters. And he's like, his whole family's going to vote and rig it.
This was like back in the 1980s.
This was in 2009.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gino wrote a macro to vote for himself, delete his history, delete cookies, and then vote for himself again.
Can we get Gino in on this?
So I might be able to hire Gino Espinelli. He's got a little big league time. So Gino wakes up one morning, and it's like the Fresno Grizzlies website. What are the voting totals? One guy's got 37, another guy has 17. Well, Gino had like 10,000 votes when he woke up one morning. So he had 10,000. Everyone else was in the 30s. And so Gino won. Gino won his own T-shirt night.
Well, we need that.
That's what we need.
We need somebody to write a macro, whatever the 2023 equivalent is, and rig the vote.
If someone could rig the vote for us.
So, either everybody go and vote or collectively
one person,
find our one listener that understands how to hack the system.
That's all we got to do.
And rig it that way.
Hack the system, make sure that you continue to vote. So, go and do that. You probably can't do it on mobile, so you're probably going to have to go on desktop to do that. I'm sure Walt could whip that up. I'm sure he's got some coding skills.
You think?
All right, guys, let's get into the games. Let's start with Thursday Night Football. It's tonight, New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Rams. Rams favored by 4. As much of the NFC is 7-7. We're all 7-7.
A playoff team.
This is, I don't know the actual playoff leverage, but it's absolutely massive for both teams because the Saints are tied atop the NFC South at 7-7 with the Bucs. The Bucs have the tiebreaker at the moment. The Bucs and Saints will play each other next week. But if the Saints lose this game, there's no path to the wild card for them anyway. They have to win the division, and this will set them back pretty bad in the division race with 3 weeks to go. For the Rams, of course, they're 7-7 like other teams across the NFL, and there's just no margin for error for them to get into the playoffs at the moment. So this is a massive game, Thursday Night Football, as far as playoff leverage goes. The Rams currently, at the moment, the number 7 seed, and they're one of 5 7-7 teams in the NFC.
Would you like to know just how massive?
Yeah. Let's hear it.
PFF's Timo Riska has a weekly article on PFF.com that you can read which shows the playoff leverage for each game.
Perfect.
And this game features the number 1 and number 2 highest leverage in this week. So each of these teams, the Rams have the highest leverage. They can have the biggest swing, essentially, in chances to make the postseason with a win versus a loss. And the second biggest swing is the New Orleans Saints. So this is the 2 highest leverage teams playing each other in a game.
This is must-see TV on a Thursday night.
There you go.
Like old school NBC, Thursday night must-see TV. Used to be Friends. Now it's Saints Rams. This is what it is. I'm looking forward to it. As far as what we're going to see on the field, the Saints, they've had offensive line issues throughout the season, and they've got last week had Andres Pete playing left tackle, Landon Young making his first start at right tackle. I'm going to be watching that pass rush situation. I know you liked Rams edge rusher Byron Young a little bit coming out. He's had a pretty nice season. He is very athletic. Not a dominant one-on-one rusher, but that guy that tracks down quarterbacks with a lot of speed and cleans things up. But he can win a little bit. He's got some impressive wins this year against certain tackles. Of course, Aaron Donald on the interior. Can the Rams create enough pressure to mess with Derek Carr in the Saints offense?
By the way, the actual leverage numbers are worth stating.
It's probably in the 80s.
So the Rams, if they win, have a 66% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose, that drops to 12%. You don't get much wider than that.
Right. In a one-game sample in week 15 or 16. Sorry, with 3 weeks left here.
The Saints, if they win, have a 72% chance of making the playoffs. So they basically go to 3/4 of a shot if they win the game. If they lose, that drops to 23%. So they go from 3/4 making it to 1/4 making it with a win versus a loss.
Yeah, and I may have misspoken a little bit earlier. Like the Saints aren't they can win the wild card because everybody's 7-7. Right. So technically they can. But if you're not good enough to win the division, where the records are the same, it's going to be tough to do. It's tough to do both, right? It's going to be very difficult for the NFC South to have a wild card team because they have to play each other. So yeah, a lot on the line here. What else are you looking for in this game here?
I'm curious if Derek Carr has another game where he actually looks like he gets these weird games where he looks like he's in the zone and suddenly the ball is where he actually wants it to go and not random. And he had one of those against the Giants where he looked really good, completed over 80% of his passes. His adjusted completion rate was almost 90%. And it's like if you got that all the way through the year, that's kind of what they thought they were signing up for, right? And it hasn't been. It's been way more inconsistent than that, even with factoring in their receiving injuries and all those kinds of things. But if you get that version of Derek Carr, the Saints are a playoff team and not one to be taken lightly given what they can bring to the table.
It's interesting that both of these teams landed at 7-7 when for me the perception is completely different. I'm surprised and optimistic about how the Rams have landed here with their super young team. And Matthew Stafford, really, this could be his best season, throw for throw. I think 2021, the Super Bowl winning season, still is, including how he played in the biggest moments. But this is number 2 in Stafford's career. This is an unbelievable job by him in the youth movement on both sides of the ball for the Rams. I'm feeling great about their 7-7, and I'm feeling sad about the Saints 7-7. The Saints have, like the other NFC South teams, one of the easiest schedules in the NFL this year, which is one of the reasons why I thought the Saints could stumble into 10 wins this year. And they're sitting here at 7-7 and disappointing. And every time it looked like they may have turned a corner, they didn't really do it. Jimmy Graham, though, red zone, unlocking it, Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to be an entertaining game. Again, Stafford against a tough Saints defense that plays pretty well in the back end. Cooper Kupp's looking like himself over these last couple weeks, him and Puka Nacua as a 1-2 punch. I think the last 3 or 4 weeks is the first time we've really seen that come together. So I'm looking forward to this game today.
And that matchup's going to be fun. The aggressiveness, the physicality of New Orleans defensive backs against those wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, for the Rams, and how that matchup goes will be fascinating because certainly Cooper Kupp, it's not like he can't deal with press coverage or anything like that, but his sort of the connection that he has with Stafford is built on precision and timing, and one way to try and disrupt that is to get physical and try and ruin the timing that way.
All right, man. One other thing is Kyren Williams the on-off splits for Kyron Williams and the without breakdown of Kyron Williams is just ridiculous. This run game has been extremely effective with Williams back there at running back. And when he disappeared, when he was hurt, when he wasn't there, they were not effective. I mean, they are a completely different offense with Kyron Williams. I mean, he's Marshall Faulk now.
Yeah.
He's Marshall Faulk for the Rams.
Okay.
So just something to keep an eye on right there. All right, man. It is the Rams favored by 4 in this game. Where are you going with this one?
Saints.
Going with the Saints, huh?
Yep.
All right. I was thinking this would be closer to a pick 'em. It really was. I thought it'd be a lot closer because the Rams, it's not really a home field advantage for the Rams. So I thought it'd be closer to a pick 'em. So I think I'm going to go Saints because of that. But if it was a pick 'em, I'd take the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win.
Moderate rain.
It's a close game. Moderate rain in the dome.
Apparently.
I mean, is
also
this the
in Los Angeles.
It's the dome
by the
that's
way.
open on the
at
sides.
the sides.
So,
but
so
it's in like a depression. It's in like a bowl at the bottom of the thing. But also, moderate rain in Los Angeles. What's happening?
I don't know. That's
World's
serious.
gone to hell.
That is serious. It's very serious. All right, we're both taking the Saints here.
We need a wellness check.
I don't love it. I don't like ever betting on the Saints.
We need a wellness check on the late Austin Gale. Rain in Los Angeles.
Yeah, is he going to be okay? He hated the rain over here in Cincinnati. All right, well, dig up we got a Discord game of the week and the overall game of the week coming up here. But first, as a parent, you've had to learn so many new skills to provide for your family, how to do copious amounts of laundry, meal plan for even the pickiest eater, and now how to protect your family's financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life provides an easy one-stop shop for your family's financial needs, offering high-quality term life insurance policies plus other financial solutions in one easy online hub. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. And Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So you can join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, man. Game of the week. I mean, there's a couple games of the week. Let's start with the Discord game. And then we'll get into Cowboys, Dolphins, and Ravens, 49ers. But Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans is our Discord game of the week. The game where on the Discord we had the closest picks for all of our, what are the people on the Discord called? Discorders?
Don't know.
There's probably a name for them, right?
If there is, I don't know what it is.
PFFs?
Oh, God, no.
Podcasties?
No,
PFF?
stop.
All right, I'll
Stop.
stop.
No.
The people on the Discord.
Yes.
It's the Browns favored by 2.5 in Houston. And it sounds like we might not see C.J. Stroud for the second straight week, still in concussion protocol after taking pretty big hit on the turf a couple weeks ago.
Not practicing still. Looks like he's likely to be out. And he had that, that was the Tua hit, right? The first one where his head smacks back against the turf. That appears to be the worst type of concussion hit to suffer for, I mean, certainly a quarterback, but anybody, I guess. Not, a hit to the head, not anything like that. It's when your head whips back and cracks backwards against the turf. That appears to be the one that has the biggest lasting impact. I mean, 2 weeks it's not like it's concerning, but it's not routine anymore. Like now you take a crack to the head, you're in the concussion protocol, you probably miss a game. Next week you're back. Stroud still being out is a little bit more concerning, but it means you now get Joe Flacco versus Case Keenum in 2023, almost 2024.
Yeah, could have had this 10 years ago.
What a world to be alive in.
Flacco coming off of, I wouldn't say a great game. I mean, I know he's getting a ton of hype, and there's some fun stats around Flacco. He's thrown more touchdown passes than the other Browns QBs, and in one game he threw more touchdowns than Kenny Pickett's entire career. Like, all those stats are fun. But Flacco got away with a whole bunch of turnover-worthy plays.
He didn't even get away with them.
Well, they got away with it as in they won the game.
Yeah.
They came away. But he made a great comeback, led a great comeback for the Browns. And the Browns defense, from a team defense standpoint, is excellent. I mean, they are in this, best defense of the last 10 years from an EPA per play standpoint. I mean, they are very good. That's going to be a challenge, man, for our friend Bobby and the Texans.
He's such a weird quarterback right now because when you look at kind of EPA per play or any of those things, he's not actually better than the other Browns quarterbacks this season. It's just that there's more volume there. He's more productive. Like, he will move the ball, and then it's a case of whether or not he offsets or counteracts moving the ball with a terrible turnover that cripples them, So, like, this was the sort of perfect game of that. He had almost 400 yards passing for 8.8 yards per attempt. These are monster numbers, but a passer rating of 78 because he turned the ball over 3 times.
And that doesn't include his fumble.
Right.
In the passer rating.
Yeah, so it's like he's not a game manager, which is sort of what you would expect a late career Joe Flacco to maybe be. It's like, just go out there with this defense and don't screw it up, right? Like, that's the walking definition of what the Browns want at quarterback right now. Flacco isn't that. He's actually a guy who's going to go out there and actually move the ball pretty well with ease, put it in some tight spots, move the ball down the field, give guys like David Njoku and Amari Cooper the opportunity to make plays. And then it's like, how many times are you going to throw it to them? If it's 1, we're probably okay. If it's 0, we almost certainly win the game because the defense is amazing and we do have playmakers. If it's 2 or 3, now it starts to get hard, and that's kind of what they're dealing with Flacco now.
Yeah, and they lost the game against the Rams. They're 2-1 with Flacco as starter, right? Am I getting that right?
I think so.
They lost the game. Yeah, they won their last 2. They lost the game against the Rams. It was 36-19, but it was a close game. It was a 1-point game when Flacco threw an interception. So I'll revise my expectations for Flacco. I don't think he needs to be the game manager necessarily, but if he's going to put the ball in harm's way, then you better hit some big-time throws. And he did hit some field flippers on Sunday against the Bears, and he's had some of those plays. So I guess it doesn't matter. The Browns' defense is playing so well, it doesn't necessarily matter how it looks. If it's game managery and they're not going to put up a ton of points, but they're not going to turn it over, or if they're going to be a little bit more volatile and they'll be able to make those comebacks and everything. But yeah, for 3 quarters, it was ugly for Flacco. Let's not forget that. And then the 4th quarter was out of this world. So I love the matchup even on that side of the ball because the Texans defense has been pretty good this year, man. They've done some really nice things. I don't know. I just have a lot of optimism for the Texans on the defensive side of the ball going forward. They're coming off a very good game against Tennessee. And even without Will Anderson, they were awesome stopping the run. They can rush the passer pretty well. And I love the way the Texans are trending on the defensive side of the ball. So I think we're going to get low scoring. The thing that makes it higher scoring is the turnovers. Because the Browns, with their pass rush, they can get a strip sack on Keenum, whatever it might be. Turnover-worthy plays from Flacco. The short fields might lead to points, but I don't think we're going to see long, sustained drives maybe for either team here in this game.
Yeah, so the Flacco thing is also, it's not necessarily as easy as it might have been earlier in the season because now remember, the Browns are down 3 starting caliber offensive tackles, so they basically have a backup on either end of the line of scrimmage. The Nick Chubb thing is important. He's not there. The run game is still fine without Nick Chubb, but it's not able to kind of take over and dominate and be the offense in a way it might have been if, regardless of the quarterback, if you had the fully healthy offensive line, Nick Chubb behind it. They need Flacco to make some plays, so they have to put the ball in his hands a bit and actually let him roll the dice and see if you get a good or a bad play. Will Anderson also still not practicing, along with C.J. Stroud, might be out again. That's a big loss. I know they have, Jonathan Grenard, who's playing really well, but if they were, Will Anderson would have had the opportunity to feast in this game, going up against backup offensive tackles. Still might, I guess, if he ends up
He's questionable,
right?
The list of players who are questionable on both teams is massive. I mean, it's that time of the year,
and he's questionable not practicing. So that the indications would be he might not play. If he doesn't, that's a big boost for the Browns, because if you were going up against Will Anderson with your backup offensive tackles and Joe Flacco at quarterback, that would definitely be a concern.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, the Texans have a huge chunk of players who are questionable. The Browns have the same, and it's not just questionable for the Browns. As you mentioned, all 3 offensive tackles already out for the season. So it's battle of backups, man, when it gets into Week 16. So Flacco versus Keenum, couple really good defenses, a one-on-one matchup to watch. Myles Garrett versus Laramie Tunsil.
Yes,
we know that from a pass pro standpoint. Tunsil is top 3 to 5 in the NFL over the last few years, and of course, We saw Garrett against Trent Williams earlier this year. It doesn't really matter who Garrett goes up against, but those matchups are always #fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the best one-on-one offensive tackle versus edge rusher matchups of the season. Absolute blockbuster stuff.
All right. Texans, remember, they were down 13-0 last week. Come back to win 19-16 in overtime. Keenum settled down a little bit, but still wasn't great. It's the Browns favored by 2.5 here on the road. You put that in the wrong spot. Browns at Texans. Where are you going with this one?
Browns. I think the Texans are too banged up for them to win and or cover.
All right. I'll also take Cleveland to cover this one. 2.5. Also massive playoff implications. Texans sitting there at 8-6, tied atop the AFC South record-wise. Browns the number 5 seed in the AFC right now. Every single one of these games, massively higher leverage as we get to the end of the year.
They are the third highest leverage team. Fourth. The Bengals are actually higher. But the Texans, if they win this game, 77% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, that drops all the way down to 33.
You should read out the leverage.
I will when it's relevant.
On all the big games.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to 2 of the biggest games of the weekend. Let's go all the way to Christmas night. Okay. Monday Night Football, 8:15, Baltimore Ravens at the San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, baby.
The 2 number 1 seeds in each conference. I love watching these games in the regular season. I almost wish we just waited to see this as a potential Super Bowl matchup, to see it for the first time. But
you think it's like the present is spoiled if we see it first in the regular season?
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, it's like something's going to happen in this game, and if they do make it to the Super Bowl, we're going to say, hey, did they adjust to this? And here's what happened last time. And on the other hand, it would be good to maybe see it fresh as a Super Bowl. But it should be a fun game. Christmas night, Niners favored by 5.5. And I think that just shows just how dominant the 49ers have been, both sides of the ball. The fact that a very good Ravens team is getting 5.5 here in San Francisco. Yeah,
it really is a fairly strong statement in how I think everybody views San Francisco, and it's difficult to argue. I mean, we've been saying for a while, when everybody is healthy, and that's the big thing. I mean, that's relevant to every team in the NFL, but we've seen literally what happens when people are missing for this 49ers team. They go on a 3-game losing skid. But when everybody is healthy, nobody's come close to stopping this team. Like, not even close. And you've got Baltimore, who are not just the other number 1 seed in the NFL, but Lamar Jackson is probably the closest rival to Brock Purdy in terms of MVP right now, or at least one of the biggest rivals. So you have direct MVP competition. You have number 1 seed versus number 1 seed. It's everything you could want in a game this late in the season. And as you say, it's a potential Super Bowl preview. So great matchup. And I honestly... it's a big statement that the man in Vegas has the 49ers as a 5.5-point favorite, but it's hard to argue. I mean, they have been rolling over people.
They have been. Let's start on the 49ers offense side of the ball, going up against this Ravens defense. Ravens are number 2 in EPA per play allowed. Now, one interesting data point here. I'm just off the top of my head. Which of these teams has the 49ers played this year? Top 10 in EPA per play allowed. Well, number 1 is the Browns defense. And that was the worst game the Niners offense had.
Yep.
I think there were circumstances for that. I don't think it was all because of the Browns. I think the Niners played poorly. I think the weather was a little tough, but that was a thing. Number 2 in EPA per play allowed is the Ravens. They haven't played the Jets, haven't played the Dolphins, haven't played the Chiefs. They're number 6, the 49ers. They played the Cowboys, who are number 7 in EPA per play allowed defensively. Niners absolutely crushed them. Didn't play the Saints. They did play the Vikings, who are number 9 in EPA per play allowed. So I guess when we get to the bottom line here, of the Niners' 3 losses, 2 of them came against defenses who rank in the top 10 in EPA per play allowed. And we talk a lot about on this show about how the offense is probably the bigger driver in even defensive success. It's not, nothing's 100%. But it's one of these things where I think the Ravens have the best chance to at least make the windows tighter.
Sure.
For the Niners. But the Niners never have tight. They have some tight windows, and Brock Purdy's made some great throws, but for the most part, they're going to scheme up some easy stuff too. Can they actually get that against this Ravens defense?
Yeah. I mean, the Ravens, look, we've been talking previously. They have a historically great record against opposing pass offenses this season. Like, they are allowing a ridiculously low yards per attempt figure. They have one of the best pass defenses in the NFL this year. And this is another reason this is such a great matchup. If you look with the PFF, the main account put out a tweet recently that was the passer rating when throwing to, the 49ers sort of big skill position players. They own the number one passer rating in the NFL when throwing to any player is 139.8 to Deebo Samuel, right? So number one, 49ers. They own 4 of the top 15 at any position. So running back, wide receiver, tight end, all put together, 4 of the top 15 are in the 49ers offense, right? Obviously, Brock Purdy being the common denominator then, but the point being, passer rating is it's a team-based stat. It's a pass offense stat. So effectively, it's a stat showing you that this 49ers offense, the main 4 guys, are absolutely cooking opposing teams. And in particular, we know that they roast teams over the middle, right? Linebackers, safeties. Now, that is an area where Baltimore has some strength, right? They've got Kyle Hamilton, this tight end eraser, slot matchup, unusual weapon that can actually, part of the problem matching up with Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle is all of those guys are matchup problems, right? They're big, they're strong, they're fast, they're versatile, they can line up all over the formation, and you can't just track them with like a cornerback. You have to have a versatile player that corresponds to that on the other side of the ball, and most teams don't. The Ravens do. They have 2 of the best coverage players in the NFL and 2 of the most versatile in Kyle Hamilton and Roquan Smith this year. So the Ravens are, I think, unusually well positioned to be able to at least deploy guys that can match up with these people. Now, can they stick with them? Can they match them in the pass concept? And, can they as a unit stay disciplined enough to cover, the plays that are just killing everybody? That's another question. But at least they're starting with a point of saying, okay, we have players that can do this. Now we got to go and execute. Most teams, I think, are going into a game against the 49ers saying, we don't even have players that can do this. How do we get around that and try and stop it? The Ravens at least can start from a point of, we know we have the guys that can do this.
Yeah, I mean, I say that a lot when teams are playing the Niners. I look at their linebackers, and you added Kyle Hamilton in there again as a slot, move around type of player. Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, Kyle Hamilton. Maybe the key to this game, slowing down the 49ers offense. The other part that you've mentioned before is, hope. Maybe it's a prayer, not a strategy, but getting up on the Niners so that they have to, play from behind. The Ravens at least have that ability with Lamar's running ability. I mean, it's really too bad Keaton Mitchell's out for the season because he's such a dynamic runner as a rookie. Blow. But they've got that downhill running attack. They've got Lamar, pretty good offensive line, and the best array of weapons for the 49ers, for the Ravens that they've had. They can win horizontally. They can win vertically. Even without Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely can work the seam. We saw that seam touchdown against the Jags. Can the Ravens put together those 12 to 14 play drives, do it early in the game, and get up 7, get up 10? If it's just 10-0, and maybe make the 49ers get out of their comfort zone. The Niners have lost 3 games, 2 of which were really close, right? They lost to the Browns. They missed a game-winning field goal too. So it's not, it's not like they got destroyed by the Browns, but they got slowed down, that offense. Mm-hmm. They lost to the Browns by 2, to the Vikings by 5, both in fourth quarter comeback opportunities for Brock Purdy in that offense where it just didn't work out. Other than that, they've pretty much won every game by 10 plus, 10, 15, 20 points. I mean, they're 1-2 in one-score games. So that's what's going to be interesting here for the Niners. As they get into the playoffs, they're probably not going to kill everybody again. I don't know if they're going to kill the Cowboys and the Eagles like they did in the regular season. Watching the Niners play in a close game here, and the Ravens have the ability they keep everything close, right? The Ravens have led in every game in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter and still managed to lose 3 of them. But they've been in every single game. So I think the Ravens will still be able to at least keep this close.
The other thing I think that is probably notable is, Kyle Shanahan's offense, the 49ers offense, has been just steamrolling everything. It's been a cheat code against everything. Remember we talked previously in the show about how that collection of Shanahan coaches, those disciples, all of them sort of collectively went and deliberately put themselves next to Vic Fangio type defensive schemes because those were the defenses that were giving them the most problems, right? They were able to go and like roast Pete Carroll disciple cover 3 guys, right?
Yeah.
They knew how that worked. They just ripped that defense to shreds. But a Vic Fangio defense were the ones that were giving them problems. So you get like Mike McDaniel going out there and hiring Vic Fangio specifically to try and practice against that and make sure that they're able to beat those defenses as well. I kind of feel like that's had so much success as a strategy that their offense actually carves those defenses up now. And if you look at the 49ers this year, the defenses that have caused them the most problems have been the ones that are like antithetical to the Vic Fangio type schemes. Brian Flores' defense has no relation whatsoever to a Vic Fangio style defense. And that's the game. The Minnesota game is the one game, I think, this year where the 49ers offensive struggles were most connected to being outcoached, right? Where the defense was showing them things that they did not expect or had no answer for, and they put the ball in weird places and harm's way and those kinds of things. The Baltimore defense is not a Vic Fangio type of defense. Like, it's another one of these, I don't want to say unique, but like different defenses. It's not like the cookie cutter scheme that everybody is using. It's a different scheme. And I think you can say that about all the defenses that this 49ers offense has relatively struggled against. It's been Jim Schwartz. It's been Brian Flores. It's been the unusual ones. It's not been the ones that they're used to.
I don't know if it matters either, but the Ravens played the Texans in week 1. It was week 1 for Bobby Slowick and for C.J. Stroud, his debut. They did a really nice job against that Texans offense, same scheme. It is interesting, too. The Ravens are going to play the Niners and the Dolphins, the same system, Shanahan and McDaniel, within 6 days of each other here in massive games. What a stretch here to finish the season for the Ravens. That Jags game last week, but now at San Francisco and then to Miami to battle pretty much for the number 1 seed, with the number 1 seed on the line on New Year's Eve. So, man, it's going to be some great football. 5.5, man. Is there anything else you want to add in this matchup? I feel like we could talk about it for hours, but 5.5, San Francisco's favored. Is that too much?
I mean, I kind of feel like it's legit when you look at what they've been doing, but I am going to go with Baltimore to cover it.
Okay.
So
you and I are leaning the same way here. As I talk through it, I think Baltimore's going to keep I think it's going to be a close game.
I think it's a fair number, but I do think that the Ravens can keep it close.
One of the fun things about football too, Sam, is you just never know how the game flow is going to go.
Right.
And that old adage, like if you play the game 10 times, what would happen? If you play the game 10 times, I could see the Niners winning, 7 of them, right? But if Baltimore gets the game flow in their favor early, I could see them, maybe putting that pressure on the Niners to execute and be perfect. And if the Niners just miss a couple throws here and there, Ravens could be able to pull the upset here.
It's like that, it's like that idea that we've been talking about for a while. This concept of taking the ball first, trying to force the 49ers into a situation where they are playing behind. I think that's a real fear for them. I do think that is a potential weakness to this offense if the game flow gets out of their control. But given how good their defense is, which is something we barely mentioned, so far, and how good the offense is and the fact that they tend to score right away, it's really difficult to put them in that situation. I mean, the Cardinals tried it last week, right? They went up, scored a touchdown, the 49ers just answered. And then the Cardinals' second shot at it, they threw a pick six, and it's like, all of a sudden going from, we almost got them into a hole, went from they're ahead and we're screwed. I think it's a live threat. If you run up against a good team and they can get the first 2 scores, I think that does potentially change the whole dynamic with this 49ers team.
One last thing, we should mention Brock Purdy. He's since the bye, since that Vikings loss, passer ratings 138, number 1 PFF grade, also since that time. And again, he's playing better in addition to getting the help from the playmakers and from the offense. That's why the Niners look like a juggernaut. Unless the Ravens completely lay an egg here, if the Niners are going to win, I think we're going to see 3 or 4 big-time throws from Brock Purdy. We're going to need to see 3 or 4 of those, crazy anticipation, sideline throws that he makes or outside of structure plays that he's made. If he does that, he'll probably solidify that MVP case here. I think I'd be fine with Brock Purdy winning MVP at this point. I'm good with it because he's playing better now. It's not just he's sitting there with a 70 PFF grade and the stats are out of this world. He is actually playing better and elevating this offense beyond what it was before. So there's this element of did he step into an offense that was already successful? Yes. But to take an offense that has Shanahan has gone to the NFC Championship every year he's had his starting quarterback, and one year where he had Purdy come in. To come in and make that team better, Purdy's done that. Like there's value in that. Just making the already good or very good great right now. Obviously, there's a ton of value in that, and I think Purdy has been the facilitator there. So I think we'll be tested here, though, is the point in this Ravens game. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, he's probably not going to end the season as the number one quarterback in PFF grade, but it's actually a possibility now. I mean, he's climbed his way up to 5th in the rankings based off this play, and as the season has gone on, he's only sort of 5 grading points behind Josh Allen at number 1. If he has 3-4 more games to end the season the same way, I mean, he could get to that number 1 spot. And when you pair that with like the stats that if you didn't know any of the context stuff, if you didn't know George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Kyle Shanahan and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's you can only hold that against him to a certain degree. Like, I think it's fair to say, hey, what would it look like if what would Dak Prescott look like in this offense, right? Or any other quarterback. I think that's a fair argument to be making. But you also have to sort of say, well, what would have happened in previous MVP campaigns if you took away like all of that, if you invalidated those MVP awards because Peyton Manning had Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison and Dallas Clark and a good offensive line and a good coordinator. Like, these are things that happen in seasons.
I mean, even Aaron Rodgers in 2021 wasn't our highest graded quarterback. I think he was 3rd.
Right.
It wasn't actually all that close, but he had the best stats in touchdown to interception ratio and a lot of the things that the voters would look at. So again, I think it depends on how you're looking at Purdy and from a value standpoint. I'll say this, it's the highest grade we've seen for a Shanahan quarterback since Matt Ryan in 2016. And if you start looking at those numbers, every time Shanahan has a QB grade above 80, we'll say, they break the league.
Right.
The league gets broken statistically, and that's what's happening this year. All right. All that said, you're going Baltimore. The more I talked about it, I said I'll take Baltimore as well to cover the 5.5. I think they'll keep it close enough. All right, we'll get to Cowboys Dolphins in just a minute here. We got our Prize Picks lineup for this week. Mentioned it yesterday on the Christmas episode as well. Prize Picks lineup for PFF today. This week, T. Higgins, we're going more than 49.5 receiving yards. Jordan Love, we're going more than 236.5 passing yards. And Josh Allen, we're going more than 24.5 rushing yards. That's the PFF Prize Picks lineup for this week. You guys can play along with us. This is our guy Eli in the booth making these picks. I think it's Eli's week to win. T. Higgins, Jordan Love, and Josh Allen all going more than their number, and that's exactly what happens with Prize Picks. You're playing against the total. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill or comedian Andrew Schultz? Well, you can do that now in the Community Plays. Find Community Plays under the promos tab of the app. That's all you have to do. View the entries from some of the biggest names of the Prize Picks community every single week. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half, does not return in the second half, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So we already showed our lineup for the week. We're ready to go. You guys can root on with us. You go to prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use code PFFNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/PFFNFL. Use the code PFFNFL. Get yourself a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that simple. All right, let's get to Cowboys Dolphins here, man.
Yeah,
another great game. 4:25 on Christmas Eve. I'm going to be trying to, get the kids. We're trying to get ready for Christmas Eve. I'm going to be distracted by Cowboys Dolphins here at that time. Wish they didn't have any good games in the 4 o'clock window so we can enjoy Christmas Eve. But this will be a fun one here. Cowboys coming off their dud against the Bills. Miami's favored by 1.5 here at home. There's a lot going up against each other here. Dolphins in this question about them beating good teams. The Cowboys, they may have answered the question about beating good teams by beating Philadelphia a couple weeks ago, but it was at home. Now, can they win on the road?
Well, now Philly might not be good.
Now Philly might not actually be that good, so does it even count? So two teams that we've compared in the past, right? Dallas and Miami, two teams that could beat up on lesser teams and, want to see them win those big games.
Yeah, it's like the can you beat a good team bowl. I think the most interesting thing is, like, the concerning thing for Dallas last week was not that they lost against a good team, was the manner in which it happened. It's like they have the best pass rush in the NFL that can take over games and force you into mistakes by, their incredible Micah Parsons, et cetera, but also, like, when you put the ball in the air quickly to get rid of the ball because Micah Parsons is coming, you've got Deron Bland there waiting to take it back for 6, right? So they have this entire defense that's set up to destroy you if you have to pass the ball, and Buffalo just went, okay, we just won't pass, ever. We'll just run it right down your throat and win because of that. Miami has this, they have a powerful running attack, albeit in a very different way. Does Miami look at that and say, whatever about Tyreek Hill, whatever about Jalen Waddle, we're just going to run the ball because apparently that's the way to beat this team. And if we have a good play action pass off the back of that, sure, we'll take it. But we are going to pivot to be more of a run heavy offense because we just saw that's the blueprint to beat you. Or was that a one game thing, right? Was that Dallas's defense has been better against the run this season, albeit still a weakness relative to their pass rush. Are they able to shore that up this week and force Miami to be a more balanced offense where they actually have a better chance?
Yeah, it is a fascinating matchup. I know the Jonathan Hankins being out for the Cowboys was thought to be a big deal. He's 330 pounds in the middle, and yards per carry wise, it's about a yard difference when he's on and off the field. We've talked a lot about splits being noisy, and maybe they are, but it might have an effect for Dallas, in part because the backup's Mozzie Smith, and Mozzie Smith was struggling anchoring against double teams in the preseason and was again against the Bills, right? So we know that Dallas for years has had issues in certain games where they just get run over. The Rams did it a few years ago. I mean, it's just been a multi-year issue to the point where we were sitting here on draft night, all jacked up on whatever steroid they gave me that day, talking about Dallas for the first time has said, never again from a run defense standpoint. We're going defensive tackle in the first round. And again happened in week 15 against the Bills. I think the Dolphins are equipped. It's a different type of running attack, though. Yeah. So here's the deal. It wasn't just the Hankins thing and the upfront stuff. When James Cook got into the secondary, they didn't tackle him. They did not. And so that's what the Dolphins do. They don't win up front and beat you up front a ton. They get Raheem Mostert into space. They get the Devin Achans in space. They get their receivers in space. The Cowboys need to tackle in space, or they're going to get run over again by Miami. And one other thing I just want to add really quick. And then the passing attack is quick. So Tua is so quick with getting rid of the ball. If Micah Parsons has a bunch of quick wins like he did last week, it might not matter because the ball's out of Tua's hands.
Right.
And so the Dolphins have the two things offensively that I think can beat this Cowboys defense.
But the other thing about their run attack, Miami's, is they're going to move you laterally. So It's not just a case of like get a big body in the middle and have him anchor against double teams. It's like you have to be able to defend the run horizontally and side to side and in space. And that, I actually don't know if that's a good thing for Dallas or not. If that helps them because they're not like the weakness is not just necessarily softness right up the gut. But like people haven't been able to slow down this Miami rushing attack that well across the board.
The one other thing I want to add, so from a Dallas perspective, we know a team that I've been raving about Dan Quinn and their ability to always force turnovers and always kind of create those game-changing plays. They usually do it against lesser teams. Tua will give you one or two opportunities a game to make a play. And Dallas historically does not pass those up on defense. Even last week, Tua goes 21 for 24 against the Jets. One of his incompletions was just late on an out route or left behind on an out route, and it was a dropped interception that could have gone 70 yards. if Tua does that, I mean, his turnover-worthy play rate's 3.3%. That's about middle of the pack this year. Even last year when Tua played great, it was over 4. That's high. Tua's playing great this year. His big-time throw rate's through the roof. We know what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are able to add to that offense, and Tua's doing an awesome job at anticipating and getting the ball down the field. But there's 1, 2, 3 plays a game where Tua just kind of double clutches, just misreads it, whatever it is. He'll give you 1 or 2 probably opportunities to make those plays. Sometimes he puts it on the turf too. He's had a few fumbles this year. That's been Dallas's game these last few seasons, is forcing those turnovers. They have to take advantage of those plays when Tunga Vailoa gives it to you.
I was just trying to run some quick numbers to see what Dallas's defense has done against generally wide runs. So I just quick and dirty, like point of attack, anything off tackle or wider.
Did you go tackle, left end, right end?
And
right
end around stuff,
yeah.
So it's not the cleanest thing in the world, but it's a broad strokes approach to it.
I like it on the fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not terrible, but they're below average in both, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's explosive run percentage allowed, whether it's yards per attempt allowed, whether it's yards per attempt before contact allowed, they're not bad, but they're not good either. They're below average across the board, and they're going up against one of the best teams in the league at doing that.
On the other side of the ball, so by the way, Tyreek Hill, I don't think he practiced yesterday, but that was expected. He's a veteran. You can't really read into the Wednesday practice,
right?
For veterans, I'm guessing Tyreek's going to go. He was questionable last week and was supposedly going to be a game time decision, but I think he'll probably go. Mm-hmm. But this is another game where there's a lot of dudes questionable. Both running backs for the Dolphins, Xavier Howard, Javon Holland. But on the other side of the ball, Dallas's offense here. Zach Martin left the game due to injury last week. Him and Tyron Smith, both questionable right now. Tyron Smith with a back, Zach Martin with a thigh. Against a Miami defense that's been very good over these last few weeks. Pass rush coming alive. Bradley Chubb playing really well. Andrew Van Ginkel. And they've been a different defense since Jalen Ramsey has come back. Again, how much of that is the quarterbacks they've played and how much of that is just, turning a corner defensively. But I think that side of the ball is going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, the other element of that, you look at the Bills-Dallas game, like getting run over all the way through by Buffalo was obviously a big problem and a big concern. I mean, Dak played terribly for the first time in a long time. Like, the other side of the ball was completely non-functional as well.
Dak having, if you take away his 3 worst games, like, here's the deal, right? You can't take them away, but just to add perspective. Because the perspective is like, what do you think you've seen this year? If you take away Dak's 3 worst games, it's literally one of the best quarterback seasons of the PFF era since 2006, right? I mean, so what we've seen outside of a 3-game sample is a guy that is just on. Decision-making has been great. Accuracy has been fantastic. He's made plays inside of structure, outside of structure. He's been outstanding. Now, you can't take those 3 games out. I'm just trying to paint this picture of, like, what have you seen from Dak for the majority of the season? We've seen elite quarterback play. What have you seen in 3 different games? You've seen a sub-50 PFF grade, 48.9 against the Cardinals, 46 against the 49ers, 39 last week against Buffalo.
Yeah.
2 out of those 3 games, of course, against 2 of the best teams that they've played
Well,
and in big games. So that's a big question mark here.
That's the thing. It's like he's had an MVP caliber season and then 3 bad games. And the 3 bad games have come against Buffalo when they played really well and are therefore one of the best teams in the NFL. Against San Francisco, who look like the best team in the NFL and have a very good defense. And then Arizona, which was like the one inexplicable game where Dallas lost for no good reason whatsoever, other than, in part, Dak Prescott played like crap, right? It's like, well, I don't know what that means. Other than to say, if Dak Prescott plays badly, they have no shot. Like, the offense, as much as it's kind of set up for Dak to succeed with, good offensive line, good skill position players, everything, if he doesn't, they're screwed.
Yeah. It is fascinating that when Dak doesn't play well, the whole team doesn't seem to play well.
Right.
Right? Like, they got destroyed against the Niners. Defense didn't play well against the Cardinals. Like, it is a full team thing. The one game where I think Dak played better than the rest of the team was probably the Philly loss in Philadelphia. And there's also been games where Dak was, pretty good and the defense played great. And remember, early in the year, Prescott didn't have to do much at all prior to the bye. So it's just an interesting dynamic here. So I think the one thing about the McCarthy era, I've said this about the Bengals a bunch, they've had these very disappointing games. Niners earlier this year, last year, the last week of the season against Washington, these not even inexplicable, but just laid an absolute egg. Terrible.
Rodgers always used to do that as well. Like the Rodgers-McCarthy partnership, you would get these games where Aaron Rodgers in his MVP seasons would play like crap. And
he did that with LaFleur too.
Yeah.
He did that with LaFleur. I mean, I don't know if that was just a Rodgers thing. But I tend to give that credit to the head coach when a team is terrible and then comes back the next week and plays well, and it looks completely different. And Dallas has a history of doing that under Mike McCarthy. They have a history of bouncing back. So last year it was the last game of the season. They lose to Washington. Dak was horrible, and they come back in the wild card round, and the offense was pristine against the Bucs, almost perfect against the Bucs, and they just kept missing extra points. So I think Dallas bounces back here. I think they'll play better. My concern is the defensive side of the ball against Miami. So I think we'll see a great game. I don't think we'll see another one-sided game where Dallas gets whooped. It's rare that happens 2 games in a row. I don't even know if it has in recent years. Miami by 1.5. Where are you going to go with this one?
I will go Miami.
All right, I'm going to take Dallas coming back here. As far as leverage goes here, Miami and Baltimore are the leaders in the clubhouse for the number 1 overall seed, but Miami has to play Dallas this week, then Baltimore, and then Buffalo, right? So there's a lot on the line here for the Dolphins, for the Ravens, for that number 1 seed, and on the outside looking in are the Chiefs, who still have a shot at that number 1 seed because they have an easier schedule, and the Dolphins and Ravens are all gonna play each other and play these tough games and beat each other up, and there's still a chance that the Chiefs are going to sneak back in and grab that bye here.
Yeah, Timo's article doesn't have seeding leverage on the line, but he does have currently that the Ravens are 69% favorites to have that number 1 seed. Obviously, that changes dramatically if they lose and Miami wins.
Yes, for sure. So a lot on the line here. Christmas Eve, Christmas night. All right, we got to fly through the rest of the games here. So back to Saturday. Starting on Saturday, because the NFL, AWS, has done a great job of saying, is there an open window? Put a game in there. Don't let Steve and Sam see their family do anything.
What the hell was that?
I don't know. It's like half AI type of deal.
I don't think AI speaks like a Dalek, like a 1980s.
Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bengals favored by 2 on the road in Pittsburgh. And it's Rudolph coming in to lead the Steelers through a 3-game losing streak. The fog, that is. The 3-game losing streak. Rudolph is going to lead them through here on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. I mean, do you need any more analysis than Rudolph at Christmas? It's got to be a win, right?
No. You saw this. You saw it coming last week. You got ahead of all the puns. Mm-hmm. You were first to the pun game.
Had to be.
When it came to Rudolph, anticipating. Now, the thing is, he's not doing it on Christmas Eve. He's doing it the day before. Christmas Eve.
Eve.
It's Saturday afternoon.
It's Christmas week, though.
It's
weekend.
not, but it's not Rudolph's. Like, he's the guy on
They
Christmas
really
Eve.
should flex this game to Christmas.
They should. They really should. That's the analysis.
Or at least Christmas Eve. I mean, it should be one of the 2 Santa-relevant games, right? Days, rather.
It should be.
But it's not.
Jake Browning, got a stat for you.
Yeah.
He's got an 80.6 PFF grade. The last 3 games, though, 90, 83, and 80. 10-plus yard throws, he's completing 75% of his passes.
Okay.
10-plus yard throws. So Brock Purdy's the leader in the NFL for qualifiers, for guys that have played more than 4 games. And Purdy's at like 60, 65%. Browning's close to 75%. Again, we know that completion percentage as a stat depends on the receiver, because sometimes you throw a prayer to T. Higgins and he goes up and catches it.
Uh-huh.
A couple of Jake Browning's passes, by the way, remember in the Steelers game, were tips. The only big plays that they had were tipped passes that landed in Jamar Chase's hands. And now Jamar Chase dealing with an AC joint injury and might not be able to play here.
Yeah, Chase probably not playing. T. Higgins, it's another one of those games where it's an opportunity for T. Higgins to show, hey, I'm actually a number 1 receiver, even when Chase isn't there. Now, T. Higgins is quietly having quite a crappy year for his standards, which, like last week aside, where he was incredible last week, had one of the best touchdowns I've ever seen. Like, that man is not been a big impact. Now, he's been dealing with injuries as well. He's missed some time, but this is not the T. Higgins that he showed last year where he's like, hey, I'm a number one wide receiver in addition to Jamar Chase. So it's a big opportunity for him to show that again, that, okay, it's not a great year, but I'm still legit, right? And I can get this done as the number one guy. This is going to be an interesting one where I think officiating is going to be quite important. Is this going to be a game where they let them go, or is it going to be a game where there's laundry every time there's physical contact between the wide receiver and the DB? Because
can I look at this data? I can look up this data because we collect it exclusively for NFL teams. What's the crew?
If you let Joey Porter Jr. and T. Higgins go at it physically, that's going to be fun. If, however, you throw a flag every time the two of them touch each other, that's going to suck. But that could be fun because those are both very physical players, and letting them go at it will be an interesting thing. And then on the other side, you have the George Pickens dynamic, right? He came out and said the reason I didn't block on that potential touchdown run is because I didn't want to get hurt, didn't want to get rolled up on from behind. And anybody that criticizes that doesn't know ball. They didn't play the game. And then all the players in the media, this is the problem. This is the flaw now when you want to criticize the media because the media spent the last 10 years stocking itself full of former players. If you go, wow, the media didn't play, well, most of them did now. So all of the people in the media that did play the game came out and said, that's bullshit. You need to block on that play.
Including you and I. I mean, you are a second team IAFL.
It's true.
I am a 2004 flag football champion. We have all played. Okay.
You have officially strapped on a helmet. It was in a studio, and it was one of these, but you did it.
Put on a helmet, yeah.
Yeah.
Done all this stuff. We've all played.
But
we've
potentially,
all played. We can criticize. We've played football.
Potentially more important and more, relevant to this discussion is guys like, our friend Andrew Hawkins, former wide receiver for 2 of the 4 AFC North teams, came out and said that's ridiculous. You block on this play. You don't spend your time worrying about when you're going to get rolled up on from behind,
Also, for a guy that, look, it felt innovative when George Pickens just in man coverage. Well, it was innovative when it was like, all right, this guy's playing man against me. It's a running play, and I'm just going to pop him.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, that's kind of tough as a cornerback because you're not expecting that. You're playing man coverage.
Yeah.
And Pickens, it felt like he might, be innovative, and instead it feels like he's just bullying at opportune times. Feels like a front runner, where he's going to pop you when it's to his favor, and then on real run plays when he actually has to, be in the because he's in the slot doing this, right? You have to get dirty when you're in the slot. When you're outside, it doesn't really matter a ton, except on long runs. But when you're in the slot, you got to get dirty. And you have to make certain blocks because the guy you're blocking is probably in the run fit, so you have to play. You have to play football.
That's true. But he was also far away enough that you shouldn't be thinking – because he, I think, referenced the Tank Dell injury.
Yeah,
right?
He's nowhere near where Tank Dell was.
Yeah, it was very different to that. Remember when the Tank Dell thing happened, and I said at the time – I had to watch it 3 or 4 times to figure out why the hell Tank Dell was even there in the middle of like a goal line formation at 150 pounds. Like, it made no sense. And it was because he specifically went looking for work after like multiple guys were already blocked and went from kind of tight slot formation to the middle of the line of scrimmage just beyond it and got taken from behind, so to speak. George Pickens was at least in the slot, in space. And not like he didn't have to look for work. He just had to block the guy right in front of him and keep blocking him and not bail on the block and let the guy make the play.
I just appreciate the self-awareness.
Thank you. There are some very concerning noises coming from the Pittsburgh locker room. This is connected to that. It's a bad run of double entendres. But Mike Tomlin, I forget who the reporter was. Somebody asked him, like, can one person essentially sour a locker room? And he said, absolutely. And they said, is that happening right now? And he said something like, it depends when you ask me. I mean, this world now of malcontents in the Pittsburgh locker room and Mike Tomlin not being able to curb that and getting these guys back on the right track seems to be a growing issue in Pittsburgh. They fired Matt Canada. That was a huge departure in terms of team philosophy, right? The last time that happened was Burt Bell in the 40s, who fired himself, right? They don't fire coaches midseason. They took out the nuclear bomb. They did it, Matt Canada's gone, and it hasn't fixed it.
Has not fixed it at all. Mitchell Trubisky has been benched after 2 rough games as starter. So it's Mason Rudolph time. Last time generally when we've seen Rudolph, it's a lot of underneath stuff. He's a guy at Oklahoma State years ago who had a pretty good deep ball. Like, he threw the ball down the field pretty well. He just didn't try it a whole lot in the NFL. I'm interested to see, I like to lean aggressive, especially when, let's assume George Pickens is okay. Like, he's still into it, right? You have a George Pickens, you have tight ends, you have guys that can make plays down the field. I'd like to see the Steelers lean aggressive and try to push the ball down the field. Their playoff life is on the line here. Steelers are 7-7, tied with the Broncos for the 10 and 11 seeds in the AFC. Bengals currently the number 6 seed at 8-6, one of 5 teams who are 8-6 in the AFC. Fascinated to just see more Jake Browning, man, because it looks similar to what Brock Purdy is doing. I still don't think Brock Purdy has a good arm, velocity-wise, but he gets the ball there. Anticipation, accuracy. Browning has several of those throws every single week where he makes up for a lack of velocity with just anticipation and accuracy, which is just, I love watching that at the NFL level because it feels like it's tough to maintain, but if you're really good at anticipating and putting the ball where you want, you're going to complete passes. It's more important in the long run. So watching Browning maintain that, looking forward to that against the Steelers here.
Yeah, Browning's look good. I mean, now, he does have one bad game, which is why his grade isn't good.
That was Pittsburgh, week 12.
There you go.
Now, was that just because it was his first game?
Right.
3 turnover-worthy plays. He was holding the ball too long in the pocket on several plays. And as I mentioned, I think his longest completion in that game was tipped. It was just a batted pass that landed right in Jamar Chase's hands. He was not good against Pittsburgh in that game.
Right.
And then he comes back the next week, goes 32 for 37 for 354.
Right. Like, if that game hadn't happened, Jake Browning would have come in and looked like from start to finish like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But there's one bad start in there as well that doesn't look as good.
And by the way, that start had a passer rating of 96. There was luck involved, but a PFF grade of 39.
Right.
So there's a big difference in reality versus the
and some of that was
numbers there.
Fumble, but still.
Yeah, of course. So all that said, Bengals by 2 here in Pittsburgh.
I will buy into the Bengals.
Yeah, Jake Browning's got special level of spite. So,
which puts Mike Tomlin up against it. That would mean he needs to win out to avoid the losing season.
Pittsburgh's probably going to win. No, I'm going to take Pittsburgh.
No, it has to be. He needs to be for the story to continue.
Win the last 2?
Yeah, he needs to be
I'll stick
up against it with 2 games to go. Win them both.
I'll stick with the Bengals. All right, certain games we definitely have to go faster. Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Chargers. Bills favored by 12 here at LA. First game without Brandon Staley for the Chargers. Who's the interim head coach again?
For the Chargers?
Yeah.
The guy who's named after an internet picture type. GIF.
Oh, yeah, GIF. It's got to be GIF, right?
I mean, yeah. Since
interim head coach bump here against the Bills.
Yeah. You think that's going to happen?
Come on, Google.
Come on, Google.
When you Chargers head coach Brandon Staley, you're a liar. Google,
no,
you're a liar.
It's not him at all.
It's certainly not. GIF Smith.
Yeah. GIF Smith. Good on GIF. Win one for the GIFer.
Easton Stick. Probably no Keenan Allen again. Chargers just lost by 1 million last week.
I don't think it's going to go well for them.
No.
I mean, last week, it was the type of game that does and did get people fired. They gave up. I mean, that game happened, and one of the first things I said to you was, did the Raiders even play well? Like, the Chargers just laid over and died, and the Raiders put up 60 on them. And it was difficult to tell. I'd made this sort of slightly rash comment that I'm not 100% convinced yet that Justin Fields is better than a guy like Aiden O'Connell. And I was like, what would really be terrible off the back of that comment would be for Aiden O'Connell to go out there and pitch like 5 turnover-worthy plays on an island game where everybody's watching. I'm like, I'm going to get a lot of tweets back for that. But he ends up with this great statistical line where, again, it's like I don't know that he even played that well. It's just that the Chargers had my back that day. You know? They were like, I'm going to make sure that Aiden O'Connell has a good statistical day so that Sam doesn't have a wall of tweets in his mentions.
I mean, O'Connell has 2 good games, 79 grade last week against the Chargers, 85 against the Chiefs, where he did kind of keep them competitive for a while against the Chiefs. Other than that, hasn't been great. But yeah, in that in that Chargers game, O'Connell throws for 4 touchdowns, passer rating of $120.
Yeah.
Bills rushing attack was the story last week with James Cook and, them wrecking the Cowboys and Josh Allen only completing 7 passes. The big thing so the Bills have the Chargers and the Patriots, and they finish with the Dolphins. They are now a team that was fighting for their playoff life a few weeks ago. And even when they started fighting for their playoff lives, blew a game against the Eagles. And they were still able to come back and beat the Chiefs and beat the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks. I think the biggest thing for the Bills is not to have a letdown here, because they put themselves in this position where they were a 500 team just a couple weeks ago. And so they have to take care of business against the Chargers, against the Patriots, and then they're at Miami the last week of the season, which could still actually be for the division because Miami's got the Cowboys and Ravens the next 2 weeks.
What's that you say? High leverage? Well, the Buffalo Bills with a win this week have a 68% chance of making the playoffs, but with a loss, that drops all the way down to 25%.
Yeah, so Buffalo needs to every game's a playoff game for Buffalo from here on out. Even though they'll be favored by double digits the next 2 weeks. At the Chargers, at home against the Patriots, they'll be double-digit favorites. In past years, the Bills mopped up in these opportunities. This year, every time they were favored by double digits, they disappointed me because I kept picking them. So yeah, to me, that's the story of the game here. But for Buffalo, the fact that their defense has started to play much better, Rasul Douglas addition a few weeks ago, I think has helped a lot. I don't see the Chargers having much opportunity to make plays against this Chargers defense, especially with all their injuries. Easton Stick's second start. Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think they get a bump, but the bump is like not getting waxed by 40. It's like the defense, the team doesn't give up and just mail in the game before it's even started. I don't think it's enough to help them win or even necessarily be competitive. So I am going for Buffalo to cover even a ridiculously large line like 12.
Yeah, I'll take Buffalo as well. What I'm curious to see with what are the big, a lot of times you have the big changes. Like Carolina, since they made a coaching change, is running the ball like crazy, volume and effectiveness. Are the Chargers just going to start playing man coverage all the time? Are they just going to overhaul? What's going to be overhauled here for the Chargers with a coaching change? I'm not sure. I'm curious to see that, I guess, but I'll take Buffalo to cover the 12. That game's Saturday night at 8. Is that the game that's exclusively on Peacock?
I
believe it is.
I've
heard Tirico's been pushing it, and I'm going to help him out. You might need to get Peacock.
We should
to watch this game.
Maybe
streaming.
This could be a quid pro quo of plugs. We push Tirico's game here on the PFF NFL podcast, and Mike Tirico to the audience of Sunday Night Football could push the PFF NFL podcast
We'll
awards.
push Peacock to our millions. He'll push the PFF NFL podcast to their millions.
People helping people.
So Mike Tirico, if you want to just encourage people to not only download and listen to the PFF NFL podcast, as you do, Mike Tirico is a listener.
But more importantly, go and vote for us.
And more importantly, go vote for us for American Football Podcast of the Year. I'm sure Chris is going to drop.
I don't see any reason that couldn't be dropped on the broadcast.
We could buy some ad time on Sunday Night Football.
Really?
We do one per quarter. We have one mention per quarter. What do you think that'll?
Can you put that kind of thing on the company credit card?
So that's the thing. We'll charge Chris.
Yeah.
And then we'll make him execute it on Sunday Night Football.
Just phone up NBC.
I would like to buy trouble at all.
I'd like to buy 30 seconds of ad time, please.
Just
credit
so
card
people
number.
know, there is a financial relationship between NBC and PFF. It is outside of Chris. So get your Peacock to watch Chargers Bills.
We're both going Bills, right?
You can also watch WWE Network. Yeah, I'm taking the Bills to cover the 12 on Peacock Saturday night exclusively.
Got it.
Streaming on Peacock. All right, let's get to the Sunday games. Only 6 in the 1 o'clock hour, which is great. There's a typo in my other, whatever. Seattle Seahawks at the Tennessee Titans. Seahawks favored by 2.5 here. Seahawks coming off their upset on Monday Night Football. Drew Lock with the game winner, but it looks like Geno Smith should be back for this game. On the other side, though, Will Levis banged up, and if he can't go, it's Ryan Tannehill getting the start.
Yeah.
I was asked this on Seattle radio. I was like, is there a drop-off between Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill? And it's like, no. Tannehill's still good. It's a little different. It's more exciting to see Levis, and he's certainly more of the future than Tannehill in Tennessee. It doesn't mean he's better than him right now, though. You're going to disagree with me?
I mean, he might not be better, but again, it's more like he's stylistically very different. So it's kind of like Tannehill might be a better quarterback, but Levis is maybe giving them more of a chance the way they're playing at the moment, or how bad they are and how bad things are across the board. Like Tannehill was good when the offensive line was solid and they could hand the ball off to Derrick Henry 25 times and that would result in 200 yards, and then Tannehill could hit play action passes off the back of that and be really efficient doing that, and the offense would cook. Now, Derrick Henry's fresh off a box score where he got 12 carries for like -8 yards or something ridiculous. Had no production. So the offense can't be built off that anymore. So now if you put Tannehill back out there and you say, right, run the play action offense, it doesn't work anymore, which is part of the reason why Tannehill had 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions before Levis took over. Levis, at least, I think, is way more volatile and capable of making his own plays. And, okay, he's going to put the ball in harm's way more often, but he's going to fire the ball into some tight windows. He's going to manufacture offense by himself. And even if the net of that might end up being, not as good on a play-by-play basis, if you're like, this guy's better than this guy, he's more efficient, he doesn't make as many mistakes, I think the offense might be better with Levis out there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it sounds like he's not going to go. Is that right? I mean, how close?
When that ankle injury happened, it sounded like something that was going to put him out for the year, and then he was like, "No, actually, it's not that bad." But I still think that feels like one that's at least keeping him out a week.
The Titans aren't really playing for much.
Yeah,
other than reps for Will Levis. So I could see Tannehill being the guy. We'll see. A lot happens between now and Sunday. Levis didn't practice on Wednesday. Jeffrey Simmons still not back at practice. He's questionable again. So the Titans defense, to me, the biggest matchup here, the Titans cornerbacks have really struggled. Sean Murphy-Bunting has not taken to playing on the outside very well this year after playing slot mostly for the Bucs throughout his career. Seattle has the outside weapons, as we know, with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had the game-winning touchdown on Monday Night Football. So I think Seattle will be able to move the ball. The only thing working against me here, you've got Seattle cross-country-ish.
Cross-country.
I can relate. I had a Tacoma to Nashville trip back in 2010. And we did that. We get in on a Monday morning, played Monday night, and then here's where they really screwed us. The next day on Tuesday, we had a kids' day. So we had like a noon game or 11 a.m. game, local time.
In Seattle, in Tacoma.
In Nashville.
In Nashville.
So I've traveled from Tacoma to Nashville. You play that night after the flight. You play that night, and then you come back the next day. We're used to sleeping in. in baseball. You sleep until 10 or 11. That's just your schedule. And you got to be up super early for the day game. Really screwed us over.
Okay.
Luckily, I didn't have to pitch. So I can relate to this. You got the Seahawks, though, traveling to Nashville where the Titans are generally better, even though they lost last week. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's your home thing. The Titans never lose in Nashville.
Titans never lose at home. Seattle's got to travel. So you got that, but I like Seattle to cover the 2.5.
Yeah, same.
But if Tannehill plays, again, like when Tannehill was at home earlier this year, he had those games, 20 for 24 for 250, super, efficient type of games, hyper-efficient games, we'll say. Give me the Titans. You're right. Give me the Titans.
I'll take the Seahawks.
Getting the 2.5 here. Seahawks 7-7, like everyone else, battling for their playoff lives in the NFC. Do you have leverage there? You have Seahawks leverage?
Seahawks leverage. They are not within the top 5 of playoff leverage teams. The end. That's the information I have.
Excellent. Let's get to the next one. I got no more use for this game. Indianapolis Colts at the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons favored by 1. I tried to type in Heineke, and it says Heidi me in the notes.
It is a high leverage game, though, by the way. Like, just looking at the
Seahawks?
Yeah. Well, just looking at the chart. It's not in the top 5, but it's pretty high.
It's up there. So Colts at the Falcons. Falcons favored by 1. Is that right?
What?
Falcons favored by 1 here against the Colts?
I mean, look, why would I have transcribed it wrong?
6-8 Falcons.
It is right.
Hosting the 8-6 Colts. Vegas not a believer that the Colts are trending in the right direction and tied for the lead in the AFC South at 8-6. So Taylor Heineke is going to get the start over Desmond Ridder, who's officially been benched.
Yeah.
Again. What were Arthur Smith's? There were some Arthur Smith comments this week that I apparently missed. Were they controversial or strong or?
I mean, I know they asked Arthur Blank as well, and everyone started to poke at this point, right? Like, hey, who's getting fired and when? And he's sort of saying, well, obviously the season hasn't really gone the way we expected it, but we're going to play out the last games and see, wait and see type of thing. I think we're leading towards an inevitable, parting of ways.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the interesting things when you look at the Falcons, I think this might sum up their season. If you have Premium Stats 2.0, all a part of your PFF Plus package, and you just look at the team grades across the board, their offense has an 80.6 grade. And I don't like a 71 grade. Their overall team has an 80.6 grade. And the team grades are not the best way to break down teams or compare team to team or say this is the best, this is the second best, but it's directionally decent, right? The overall team is good. And they have a 53 passing grade, which is as a team, which is one of the worst in the NFL, of course. The Browns are kind of down there as well. And but we saw that, right? We know it's because Deshaun Watson was hurt. They played PJ Walker. They played DTR as a late round rookie. It makes sense. But the Falcons are really strong across the board in a lot of the grading, except quarterback. And I know we've said that a lot throughout this season, but that's the thing that's held them down. And they made the similar investment, the same bet that the Commanders made. Here's this somewhat unproven mid to late round pick in year 2. We're going to give him a chance. It hasn't worked for Desmond Ridder. And last week was just too much, man. Like I said, the 2 turnovers that completely changed that game against Carolina. And so they're going with Heineke. Theoretically, I always mention Heineke might give more opportunities to those guys. You always say no.
The thing is, it just doesn't matter. I mean, and I think they know that. Like, they've just reached the point. Like, Arthur Smith has reached the point in this season where he is just trying things to try things. Like, I've run out of ideas. I don't have any good solution to the problems. I'm just going to make a switch and hope that does something. And I catch lightning in a bottle, and we get the one game where Taylor Heineke is able to go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady and look like a superstar. And if I get that, we're good. But it doesn't. Like, they're both bad quarterbacks. Neither one of them has any business starting in the NFL anymore. Each one of them, there was a period of time where it made sense to give them a shot. And now they've had the shot. They didn't take it. And the Falcons have 2 of those guys right now and no alternative. So one of them is going to play in this game. It honestly makes no difference which one plays. They're both not good. And even if it did make a difference, they're probably being hamstrung by this offensive game plan that seems to try and outsmart itself at every turn, and instead of just feeding the ball towards the athletic freak shows they have on offense, finds a way of like misdirecting that and instead targeting some rando that has no purpose in the offense.
On the other side, Gardner Minshew playing a little bit cleaner the last couple weeks, got the turnover-worthy play rate down to 4.4%. I mean, if you take out the 12 that he had in 2 games, I know it's, slice and dicing in the data isn't always the way to go. But when you have 2 games where he had 12 turnover-worthy plays, again, what have we seen outside of that? Gardner Minshew's played solid ball. He's played solid. And I think, again, if Shane Steichen deserves some credit for just getting them to 8-6. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Taylor, they're hoping to get him back. I don't know if he's back this week or not, but they've had an effective running game. They've done just enough offensively, and they've had these games where the defensive line has been outstanding, including last week, rushing the passer. So I think, Indy, what do you say about Indy? They're a solid team. Good offensive line, solid across the board, competitive. I don't think they're a team that does damage in the playoffs. I don't know if they make it to the playoffs, but impressive that they're sitting here at 8-6 heading into week 16.
Yeah, the Colts were not expected to win this number of games with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Like, remember, they were supposed to be bad this year, and it's like next year we'll see the real version of what this team can be. I mean, they lost their quarterback and are still, at this point, potentially heading to the playoffs. Like, that is a serious job of coaching and potentially overachieving from this team across the board. They deserve huge credit for it.
They do. So why is Vegas disrespecting them as underdogs here on the road in Atlanta?
I don't know. I'm picking the Colts. I think they're better. They have a pass rush that can cause problems for Atlanta. I mean, the only, I guess, danger is, look, the feeling is that the Falcons should be better than this and blah, blah, blah. They have won 6 games. They're always, close. And because of those playmakers, they can put it together in any random game where, if Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke don't turn the ball over a ton and they do manage to just feed the playmakers enough, like Drake London can make plays, Kyle Pitts can make plays, Bijan can make plays. They have guys that can cause damage. So it's difficult to write them off in any game.
Yeah, I mean, they're 6-8, the Falcons. They've lost 5 out of their last 7, and they lost by 5, by 3, by 2, by 4, and by 2.
Right.
In their last 7 games. So they're on one hand they're better than their 6-8 record. On the other hand, were they overachieving early on and just kind of regress back because with that type of quarterback play?
And the problem is more, it's like the bad teams. Like they have, I think, the easiest schedule in the NFL this season. And
all of the NFC South teams have cakewalk schedules relative to everyone else, and no one's over 500.
Yeah, and they're finding ways to lose to some of the worst teams in the NFL. Like they lose to the the Carolina Panthers, who were headed to that number 1 pick and looked absolutely hapless, including in this game. They lose to Arizona, who are also pretty bad. Like they've lost to all the other bad teams.
All right, I'll take the Colts as well. I can understand the line though. The more I think about it, I'll take the Colts to cover, getting 1. All right, we've got a minute and a half here on Washington Commanders at the New York Jets. No more, no less. Commanders favored by 3 at the Jets here.
Yeah, this is another one of those, I guess, very movable objects versus the very resistible forces.
Battle for for top 10 pick positioning here.
Terrible offense versus terrible defense. Which one wins?
Aaron Rodgers will not play football this season. As I said earlier in the year, remember when you were like, oh, he's walking. He's throwing a football. I said, well, what's the perspective there? What does that actually mean? Apparently nothing.
Well, I mean, he might have had they been in playoff contention.
I doubt it. I don't think he's ever going to be.
They are rostering him, though, which is a little weird.
Yeah, why is he taking up a roster spot?
I think because they have to, because they opened that window, right, just to make sure that they could put him in if they were in.
Does it change things financially as far as if he goes on IR versus?
No, I don't think so. But I think it just means they have to carry him on a roster spot.
Yeah. So Zach Wilson still in concussion protocol. I remain intrigued by Zach Wilson.
Come on.
2 weeks ago, we saw the best Zach Wilson we've ever seen. Yeah. Last week, every time he finished completed a play action pass, Dolphin in his face. Dolphin in his face. Couldn't do anything.
Snowflake the Dolphin?
Snowflake. Yeah. They can't do that.
Why is that a thing? Why? Like who? So
he was under pressure 75% of his dropbacks. You've made this hypothetical cutoff of 40 is like tough to run offense. Well, almost double that. That's what Zach Wilson was under last week. So and then he got hurt. He only had 16 dropbacks.
Yeah.
But the last full game we've seen from Zach Wilson was really good. Really good.
Okay.
So I wish he'd get back out there so we could watch him a little bit more instead of Trevor Siemian.
You're the only person in the world that wants to see more Zach Wilson play.
Yeah. Look, I've been wrong before. I wanted to see more Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
Here we are. It's Rudolph time. Leading us through the fog. I mean, you're a big Sam Howell fan. Look at that. That's all falling apart.
Yeah, but he's shown significantly more than Zach Wilson ever has. He has. Stop it.
Not in Wilson's best game. Not 2 weeks ago.
Not in Wilson's best. So in the one Wilson good game.
That's right.
You're telling me he's shown more than Sam Howell has ever thrown.
What have you done for me?
Who for a period of time was leading the NFL in big-time throws. How many big-time throws does Wilson even have in his NFL career?
I don't care. He was centered.
Oh, you don't care?
Centered Zach Wilson in games that he completes has a passer rating of 120.
I'm sorry. I'm not interested in data points that contradict my
Maybe
theory.
Sam Howell needs to get centered.
So in 3 years, Zach Wilson has 28 big-time throws. Please tell me Sam Howell's more than that this season alone. It's pretty close.
25.
Sam Howell has 28 big-time throws this season alone.
Okay, way to use one data point.
Yes.
Just pick the game.
The only good unit in this game is the Jets defense, therefore they win.
Yeah, I'll take the Jets to cover they're getting 3. I'll take the Jets to cover the 3 because their defense. Battle for, like I said, draft positioning at this point. Green Bay Packers at the Carolina Panthers. Packers only favored by 4.5 here in Carolina because the Panthers have more December wins than the Philadelphia Eagles, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. 1-0.
Okay. And
so Panthers are rolling.
the Packers, LaFleur has December losses now for the first time ever.
Kind of a useless stat.
Well, it is now.
Yeah.
It was useful.
He was undefeated in
right.
December.
When he hadn't lost in December, it was a useful stat. Now he's lost multiple times in December.
Joe Barry, under heat, defensive coordinator for the Packers after just the last couple weeks. Again, within 6 days, Tommy DeVito leads a fourth quarter comeback, and Baker Mayfield puts up a perfect passer rating
Yes.
in Lambeau.
The second one was the problem. Like the first one, Joe Barry's been under criticism for a long time, but it's a difficult argument to make at times because they actually don't give up that many points. And if you look at a lot of numbers, they're broadly speaking just average. They're not terrible, but they've been situationally terrible. So it's like it manifests in the Tommy DeVito drive, right, where they get way too soft, they make it too easy, and they give up the game because they got bad at the wrong time. The Bucs game, though, it was like this was just awful start to finish. Like that's the game that you use to say we need to get him out of here. And honestly, that was the kind of game that could get people fired generally. Like it wasn't quite the Chargers-Raiders game, but it wasn't a million miles away. That was an awful game. So he needs to bounce back. Like he needs to show up this week and have a game plan that can actually stop this team, which, let's be honest, shouldn't be that hard because everybody else has. So, if Bryce Young has his best game of the season, that's a pretty bad indictment against Joe Barry's defense this week.
I've done that for other defenses. I think it was the Vikings last year. I went down and I looked at all the quarterbacks and said, how many guys had their best game of the season against the Minnesota Vikings defense last year? It was like 5 guys.
Right.
That's a lot. I mean, to have their very best game, their highest graded game, it was like Mac Jones, Dak Prescott, it was a bunch, Jared Goff or whatever. I don't know if the Packers are at that level necessarily, but certainly Baker Mayfield, best game in a long time for Mayfield last week. Bryce Young, though, also coming off of his best game in the rain against Atlanta. Wasn't like it was incredible or anything, but he made a few nice throws down the field. Didn't turn the ball over as much as he usually does. So always looking for just a little positivity at the end of a rookie season, and maybe that sparks a little something for Bryce Young here. At home, getting the 4.5.
If Green Bay lose, they drop under 10% to make the playoffs.
They're 6-8.
Yeah.
Right now, right?
Now, if they win, they don't exactly go that high. They stay at a 33%-ish chance to make the playoffs. But if they lose, they're basically done.
All right. Green Bay favored by 4.5 in Carolina. Where are you going with this one?
Green Bay. I mean, they can function on offense. I was actually kind of encouraged by their offense, even in the loss. I can't imagine the defense will be as bad as it was a week ago.
Yeah. Going back to like preseason takes, Green Bay having Jordan Love playing pretty well with the receiving group, showing a lot. I mean, I think there's optimism in Green Bay if they could figure out that defense. All right, our next partner is AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. We drink it every single day here on the PFF NFL podcast. Love it because I like to drink my coffee in the morning and I like to get all my nutrients in the morning. Makes me feel energized and ready to go to take on the day. Makes me feel good, man. Putting something good in my body as well. Like I'm giving my body the nutrition that it craves, covering all those nutritional bases. That's important every single day. So that's why we like to drink AG1 every single morning. You just mix it with some water, chug it down, and you're good to go. All great athletes, they have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies. And a huge part of that starts with optimizing whole body health. A lot of them also drink AG1. That's why I'm a huge fan. With every daily serving, I'm setting myself up for success with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me the key daily nutrients to support energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It's this micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take great care of their health every single day. Also love that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good, if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with high-quality sourced ingredients, a win-win for everybody here on the PFF NFL podcast. So for me personally, it's been great because it's a part of my diet now. It's a part of what I do, part of my routine, and like I said, the way I kick off my day. So if you're in on this as well, if your comprehensive solutions what you're looking for from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. That's a great deal. You go to drinkag1.com/PFF. That's drinkag1.com/PFF. Go check it out right now. All right, what's the next game? Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to play each other 2 out of the next 3 weeks here. Lions favored by 3 in Minnesota.
Yeah, this is an interesting game for that. We had an email complaining that I keep referencing this game from last year, but the game last year where Ben Johnson was just destroying Ed Donatel and was ahead of him, all the way through the game. Very different dynamic this year. Now you've got Ben Johnson, still one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL, going up against Brian Flores' defense, which has done the inverse of that to teams this year, where they've been a step ahead and they've caused offensive problems. So, what does that look this time around? I think that's a really fun matchup because I can't say enough good things about what Flores has done to that defense, which personnel-wise still isn't great. I mean, you look at what they are bringing to the table, certainly on the defensive line outside of Donnell Hunter. Linebacker, it's Hicks and it's Ivan Pace Jr., who's an undrafted rookie who is still pretty limited in terms of what he can do. He's not a complete linebacker right now, and they're still making that work. It's the 3 safety thing. It's cornerbacks who none of them look like, impact playmakers right now. And somehow that's all coming together to produce a top 10 caliber defense that's a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks and coordinators to deal with. So, I think Flores is assistant coach of the year right now, and going up against one of the best in the game in Ben Johnson and that Lions offense.
What I'm curious about is that when you're a defensive coordinator, how did they land at this strategy? And if we break down the strategy as they rush 6 more than any team in the league, as you've laid out, right? They rush 6 more than anybody and rush 3 more than anybody. Because it's do you sit down on paper and say, okay, these are 2 extremes that we want to push toward? Because what it does is it makes the offense, this is what I think is genius about it, is it makes the offense react completely differently. So when you have to face a blitz, whether it's 5 or 6, you immediately have to have an answer. You have to have a blitz answer and get rid of the ball quickly. When there's a 3-man rush, I think the mistake a lot of quarterbacks make against a 3-man rush is when they get rid of the ball too quickly. Because a lot of times against a 3-man rush, the best strategy is actually holding the ball and maneuvering the pocket and finding you have 2 extra escape routes essentially from the pocket, and you have more room to maneuver. So you're better off against a 3-man rush actually taking your time, not really hitting something in rhythm unless it's just wide open. But you don't have to hit anything in rhythm. You take your time, you wait for the coverage to break down, and then you hit a pass, especially in the red zone. 3-man rush in the red zone, you just kind of wait for coverage to break down. So you're essentially making the quarterback do 2 extremes. 6-man rush, you get rid of the ball. You have to get rid of the ball quickly. If you don't, you're in trouble. 3-man rush, you should take your time and so you're making them work at those 2 extremes. And most rushes are 4 or 5, right? They're in the middle. And so now the Vikings are making quarterbacks do opposite ends of the spectrum, and they disguise it all, and you don't know when it's going to hit. I think that's just genius overall. And was that the...
You know what it's like?
What?
It's like it feels like pitching in baseball, right? Where you get them used to the fastball, and then you hit them with the changeup.
Changeup.
And then they swing too quick. They're too fast. They're too ahead of it.
Look at you. Yeah. Good job. Brian Flores is Greg Maddux.
So he sends him. He's throwing 95 the whole time, right, or whatever an actual fastball is these days.
Yeah.
6 guys the whole way. So you speed up the process. You're like, panic, got to get rid of the ball, and then you keep dropping into coverage every now and again, and their process is too quick. They're getting rid of it. They're throwing it to places they shouldn't, and that's where all the mistakes come from.
We're getting at something here. Because look, when we would talk about pitching, Sam, the 3 ways you can mess with the hitter are throwing the ball in and out, opposites, up and down, and then there's the front and back component. That's the changeup, right? You mess with their timing front and back. When defensive coordinators disguise coverage, a lot of times it's too high safety and roll to 1, or vice versa, right? Because that changes your reads, it changes the side of the field that you're going to, it creates some indecision. Is this a newer way of messing with the quarterback, which isn't like, here's the different read, we're going to make you the safety rotation. We're actually this is your change up, which is making you speed up or slow down your process based off what we do. It's just fascinating to me.
And the fact that it's 6 is so important because 6 is generally the number that you're not going to be able to pick up easily,
so it has to come out quick.
Yeah, if you're
you're not going to block it up.
Yeah, if you're just rushing 5, theoretically you have that picked up most of the time, right? Whether it's the 5 offensive linemen and you have the protection call correctly, or having a running back there to check before he releases, even if he's out in the pattern, most of the time you are able to pick up 5 if you have a vague idea of where it's coming from, right? Or even just a general idea that it's coming in the first place, which you will have when, guys are all stacked to the line of scrimmage the way the Vikings do. When it's 6, you might not have the capacity to pick that up, which means the extra guy is hot, right? The quarterback is now responsible with getting for that guy, which means the ball has to come out quickly. And if that guy isn't actually rushing, now you're trying to get rid of the ball quickly to the place you shouldn't.
Yeah, it's just a fascinating strategy to me. I think it's something to think about, and I'm just curious if they landed at it with intention. If it's like, hey, we're gonna on half of our defensive snaps, we're gonna work with these extremes here. From a Lions perspective, and no guy in the chat, we always talk about the Lions. We rave about the Lions. Don't give me this. We only talk about their opponents. The Lions have good blitz answer types. Amon-Ra St. Brown's one of the best in the league at working the slot, the middle of the field. And as you mentioned last, Ben Johnson is good at having answers. So Jared Goff is also awesome at avoiding sacks, getting rid of the ball. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta work in the middle of the field. I think those guys are going to be huge in this game because when the blitz does come, those guys are tough to cover.
Yep.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that side of the ball I think will be absolutely fascinating. And then the other side of the ball, it's going to be a Nick Mullins game again, right? And it's like that didn't go great last time.
I thought he played well. Look, he played well and had 2 terrible interceptions. All right, so listen, be consistent here. When Bryce Young threw, in week 1, because you like Bryce Young, you're like, we played well, but he had two bad interceptions. Nick Mullins moved the ball pretty well throughout the game. He had a disastrous red zone interception, and he had the interception that moved 2.5 footballs.
Yes.
Off of a lineman's head and then his own buttocks and then back to the lineman. I get it. I understand that it happened.
Which was one of the worst interceptions anybody has ever thrown.
I understand, but those are extremes. It is, a guy like Nick Mullins needs to avoid the disastrous plays because when he just sits there, and I think it also showed Justin Jefferson, man, is so good, getting open. He's always open no matter who's throwing it to him. He creates, he helps the quarterback, man. He helps him a lot. And so they have a chance to move the ball as long as Mullins doesn't make those disastrous mistakes.
Yeah. This game felt a lot like I said this coming out of that week. There were a few games last week where there was a lot of quarterbacks sort of throwing up passes that seemed more in hope than in expectation and getting rewarded for them. And this was a game where that was true on both sides of the ball, actually, in fairness. Jake Browning threw a couple of prayers to T. Higgins, but there were a lot of passes that Nick Mullins put out there where it's like, that doesn't feel like a great pass, and somehow it's actually ending up okay. Like the touchdown to Jordan Addison, where he barely picked it up off the ground and somehow managed to keep running and turn it into a score. Yeah, he did move the ball. I still don't know that it's a win versus having Josh Dobbs out there. Like, they're both not good quarterbacks, but at least Dobbs brings the capacity to turn any broken play into a first down with his scrambling. Nick Mullins has the capacity to turn any broken play into one of the worst interceptions you've ever seen. That doesn't feel like a net win, even if the down-to-down efficiency passing will be higher, and I'm not sure you can rely on it on that being the case. So, I don't know. I just they need Nick Mullins to not, screw it up, and I don't know that that's likely.
One more thing to highlight here. Penei Sewell, right tackle for the Lions. He's questionable. I mentioned on the review show, he's got a 93-plus run blocking grade this year.
Yeah.
On pace to be the second best behind Trent Williams in 2021 in over 10, 12, 15 years. So Penei Sewell's playing great, all-pro caliber level. And then the thing we've highlighted every week, the Lions need help rushing the passer. Aiden Hutchinson has 81 pressures. Number 2 on the team is Alim McNeil with 33. He's on IR.
Right.
So they need help. John Kaminsky's been like a good rotational in and out type of pass rusher. He's got 28. They need help. And I don't know what they're going to end up doing down the stretch here with some tough games. Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings again. Are they going to blitz a little bit more? Are they going to try to manufacture more pressure and some help for Aiden Hutchinson? Something to keep an eye on. But I love the Lions, the way they're playing. I think they'll have blitz answers for the Vikings. They've got the run game cooking with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, number 2 and 3 in yards per carry since week 8. I like the Lions a lot. Did I just unplug my mic? I hope not.
Are the Lions getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, or is he just back practicing.
I think I just saw him answering questions and talking. I don't know
That's
that
what I mean.
he's coming back.
He's definitely back practicing, but I don't know if he's back. I don't know if he's playing.
I doubt that he's ready to go yet, but could be a big help.
Yeah, I mean, if they get him back, I think that's a big difference to that secondary.
All right, Lions favored by 3 here in Minnesota. Where are you going?
All right. This time I'll give the Vikings a shot. Maybe the next matchup between the two, I'll have a different opinion based
With
off
Mullins.
that. More based off that Flores-Ben Johnson matchup. I'm going to give the initial edge to Flores, and then I might walk that back the next time they play.
All right, I'll take Detroit to cover the 3 here in Minnesota. Jacksonville Jaguars at Tampa Bay Bucks. Bucks favored by 1 here. Massive high leverage game for both teams. Both teams are tied atop their respective South division. Bucks 7-7 in the NFC South. Jags 8-6 in the AFC South. I said NFC for Bucks, right? Bucks coming off of that thrashing of the Packers. And great offensive performance by Baker Mayfield in that passing attack. And now we have the Jags coming off their Sunday night loss. Trevor Lawrence still in concussion protocol. They're signing practice squad quarterbacks and the whole deal, so that it seems like they're preparing to not have Trevor Lawrence here. I believe it's about a 22% chance that quarterbacks or that players pass concussion protocol within 7 days, which is one of the other Brock Purdy just being superhuman. He's like he's the only quarterback to pass concussion protocol within a week. Did it in like 3 days. Maybe he is AI, like Kyle Brandt said. It might be a CJ Beathard game here for the Jags. Inopportune time to maybe lose your starting QB here. Trevor Lawrence dealing with 4 or 5 different injuries as well.
Yeah, not great at all. Pretty high leverage game as well across the board. I mean, Jacksonville's still in a reasonable position, but if they lose, they drop down to 50-50 to make the playoffs, let alone the number 1 seed where they were a couple of weeks ago. If they win, they're all but in. They're 90%. The Bucks, same kind of idea. If they win, they get up to 85%-ish, and if they lose, they're down to 60. Baker Mayfield trying to sucker everybody back in, out there with his perfect passer rating and his carving up of Joe Barry's defense and his high leverage plays. And you're like, hey, I'm back, baby. Not buying it yet.
You're still not buying it yet.
I'm not doing it. I've refused. I've been suckered in by Baker Mayfield too much. I'm not doing it again. It was nice. It's been nice. I'm still not buying it.
So there's a few different things at play there, right? Dave Canales comes in, and I think he's done a nice job all year working with that offense, even though they're still only averaging 20, 21 points per game. It's not like they're tearing it up offensively, but just creating more open throws. Remember last year, Byron Leftwich calling plays. There wasn't a whole lot of easy in that Bucs offense. We've seen, at least over the last few weeks too, whether it's the screen calls to Rachaad White at the right time. There's multiple 30-yard touchdowns to Rachaad White on screens this year. Mm-hmm. There's Rachaad White last week up the seam on a really nice touchdown. So I think Canales is doing a great job. Chris Godwin has come alive these last couple weeks, ironically, as he's been banged up and on the injury report. And Mike Evans is still Mike Evans, capable in any given week of just, being just a monster down the field, gets open, and he creates big play opportunities. But Mayfield, again, is still 27th in the league on 10-plus yard throws, completion percentage-wise. He was 10 of 11 last week against Green Bay. Can he keep that up? They've had opportunities to make plays this year, and Mayfield's been inconsistent. But overall, they're playing better these last few weeks, and it looked like the season might have been over for the Bucs, and here they are in control of the division and in control of their own destiny. And I'll say this, it's a break for them if they face Beathard instead of Trevor Lawrence, because they have this game, they have the head-to-head against the Saints next week, and then they have the Panthers to finish the season. The Bucs have a path to winning the division here.
One interesting dynamic about this Bucs offense is earlier in the season, Baker Mayfield was like the best quarterback in the NFL on third down. Like Dave Canales was dialing up just incredible plays on third down. Baker was hitting what was there, first read almost all the time, and the numbers were insane. That's cooled off as the year has gone on. Like his production hasn't been as insane on third down, and yet I think he's probably improved in other areas to counteract that a bit, So maybe he's not like I was sort of expecting that when that disappears, when that goes away, Baker's going to drop way off. But actually, he's been able to raise his game to kind of make it a wash, and he's still playing pretty well. So, look, I think that, the Baker Mayfield, this Bucs offense, it's solid. It's not bad. Like the weapons they have are significant. Rachaad White out of the backfield is a real weapon for them, and Baker Mayfield is generally making pretty good decisions. But it'll be a very different game against this Jags defense than what we saw against Green Bay, which was just miserable.
On the other side, I want to steal a data point from Robert Mays here of The Athletic. Jags offense. So I don't know. Everybody's got different EPA numbers, but I'll just take whatever Robert Mays said here. They're 31st in EPA per play. EPA lost. Total EPA actually lost on drops. 30th in EPA lost on fumbles. 31st in EPA lost on wide receiver or tight end screens. And 30th in EPA gained on running plays. So, look, it's not like a Trevor Lawrence, apology tour or anything like that. But we mentioned earlier in the year, they were dropping passes at the wrong times, and the Chiefs have caught up in a lot of these areas, high leverage drops. But the Jags aren't getting help with regard to drops, putting the ball on the turf. They're not getting free yards from screens, and the running game isn't very effective. If Trevor Lawrence was playing, that's a concern, because it does feel like there's more pressure on him, right? He's got to make, higher leverage, tighter window throws, and make sure he doesn't miss because he's not getting the free yards. If C.J. Beathard is running the show here, it's all the more difficult, I think, for the Jags, because they're just not good all around, and I think that's one of the disappointments for a team that was supposed to continue to progress here under Doug Peterson.
Yeah, I mean, the general dynamic for that Jags offense this season has been Trevor Lawrence putting the ball more or less where it needs to go and often being let down by his receivers or his skill position players. If you then take away the one thing that was functioning, like now it's instead of Trevor Lawrence putting the ball more or less where it should be, it's C.J. Beathard out there probably not doing that most of the time. I mean, now you've got all the weaknesses of the offense paired together with a new weakness that doesn't bode well, generally, you would think. So yeah, I think I think it's probably terminal if they don't have Trevor Lawrence out there, to be honest.
So the Bucs are favored by 1 at home. Where are you going?
Bucs.
Yeah, I'll also take the Bucs. And Matt, I'm assuming the leverage is high. It'll be higher leverage when it's Bucs Saints the next week. But if the Bucs win this game, they could clinch the division, I believe, next week by beating the Saints. So there's a lot on the line here for both teams. Jags, again, they're 8-6, tied atop the AFC South. They can't afford to lose any game either. So it's a big one in the 4:05 window, Christmas Eve. Some other fun games here. Arizona Cardinals at the Chicago Bears. We got 2 minutes here on this one. 2 minutes for the next 4 games.
I mean, maybe Justin Fields. It's all Justin Fields all the time.
Cardinals at the Bears. Bears favored by 4:25 on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. I mean, this is a defense bad enough that Justin Fields can and should maybe look good. Last week was strange because on the one hand, he got screwed out of a deep pass by Robert Tonyan dropping that wide open play that should have been a huge gain and potentially a touchdown. He also technically got screwed out of the game-winning Hail Mary, right? Like that landed in the hands of Darnell Mooney. Should have been, I guess, by virtue of that, a Bears win, a Justin Fields Hail Mary. We start talking about Aaron Rodgers Hail Marys and blah, blah, blah. So you come
Which
out
is stupid because all Hail Marys are lucky, even Aaron Rodgers Hail Marys.
Right. But you sort of look at that, and the takeaway from that game is like he got robbed out of 2 huge plays that was the difference between winning and losing that game. On the other hand, he didn't actually play that well. Like he had a few plays that were really good, and he didn't get rewarded for most of them. But generally, he wasn't very good in that game, which kind of is the Justin Fields experience, right? It's like we get flashes of brilliance. Sometimes he's rewarded for those, and sometimes he's not. But overall, it's still not good. Now, Can a game against the Cardinals defense change that dynamic, and actually we end up looking really good because the baseline is higher against the worst defense?
On the other hand, Kyler Murray, he's still kind of playing for his future, right?
They seem to be bought into him already. This could just be talk, right? Like, what else are you going to say? But at least all the noises coming out of that building are positive in terms of what they think about Kyler Murray, and he's the guy going forward, and we're going to build around him, and yada, yada. I mean, I don't know if he can have shown you that yet in his return. Like, he's been fine, but like if you were undecided, if this was a blank slate for Kyler Murray, for Monty Austin Ford and the people in that building, I don't know if you can possibly have been convinced by the, 5 games he's played so far?
That he's the guy or not the guy?
That he's either way.
No, I mean, it's been more bad than good, I'd say. If you look at the last 2 seasons for Kyler Murray, last year before he got hurt, 6.1 yards per attempt. 6.1.
Right.
Remember last year it was just the same game every single week. No big plays. This year, 6.4 yards per attempt. PFF grade, 67 last year, 64 this year. This grade this year is comparable to his rookie season grade.
And
it hasn't been a great last year plus of Kyler Murray data points, 18, 20 games, whatever that number is. It hasn't been great.
Right. And in his defense, I mean, he is coming back off an ACL. I don't know if you should expect him to play well this year. It's just interesting to me that they appear to be sold on what doesn't, I can't see why you would be sold on what we've seen.
Yeah. So it's an interesting game from that perspective. I think Kyler Murray and Justin Fields, we're going to wrap it up on this. Murray and Fields both kind of playing for their current team. I think playing for the rest of the league, especially Fields. Fields maybe more than Murray. The Cardinals right now tied with the Patriots, 3-11 records, but the Patriots have the tiebreaker for the higher pick, so the Cardinals would pick 3 as of right now. So there's a lot on the line as far as draft picks go. But if Arizona sneaks up into that top 2, again, just like they'll have a decision, just like the Bears will have a decision between Drake May, Caleb Williams, or Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, that whole square of quarterbacks there.
Square of quarterbacks.
Sure. Or rectangle. Bears are favored by 4 here. Where are you going?
Well, Victor Dimukeje is on. He's questionable. Therefore, there's no shot for the Cardinals defense to contain Justin Fields.
Barbarian healthy? I got the Barbarian sacking Fields twice here.
Twice?
Maybe
he's going to need it if he wants his 10 sacks in the season.
Is he still sitting at 4?
I think so. Did he get one more?
He's going to have 3.
3.
He's the one who knocked Brock Purdy out of the game. I was mad at the Barbarian for that head-to-head shot there, helmet shot. I'll take Arizona, pulling the upset here.
The Barbarian
or at least covering the 4.
has 5 sacks.
Yeah, he's going to sack Fields 3 times.
4 of which came in the first month of the season.
Yeah, he's still got a good pass rush grade. He's going to get 3 here.
Gotcha.
Christmas Eve night, Santa's flying through the air. It's 8:15, and the New England Patriots are traveling to the Denver Broncos, with the Broncos favored by 6.5. Discuss.
Okay.
I'll be on a call with Kelly's family doing Secret Santa gift exchange during this game, I believe. That's what
It's
we're
a
doing.
good thing as any to be doing during the game.
Yeah. I like that the NFL has not gone out of their way to put a great game on Christmas Eve night. The last year was Steelers-Raiders. They said we're not gonna do that.
And this is one where, sometimes the game looks good on paper in August, and then by the time you get to December, it's rough, right? This is one where even in August.
No, they knew.
Yeah.
It'll be a good game. It could end up being good, but it probably won't be
Might
great.
be fine, but it's unlikely to be a barn burner.
We know it won't be that Ravens-Niners game.
Right.
That we know we're going to save that for Christmas Eve. Christmas night when everybody's, winding down. So Christmas Eve night, Broncos favored by 6.5 here. We got 2 minutes on this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots, it's been pretty miserable, Nothing really has changed. Their defense is still solid. I'm sure they can cause Denver some issues. I don't know if Denver is, how real or significant was that blow up from Sean Payton on the sideline towards Russell Wilson? How much that was it was a bad game getting away from them. He was pissed off.
What was that after? Was that anything in particular, or just everything was bad?
I think the reasoning was the latter. Everything was getting away from them. It was bad. That was an extended period of pent-up frustration being released in one moment. I forget what the actual moment was that caused it, but it was a disproportionate response to whatever was happening at that specific moment anyway. But is that the kind of... if you're Russell Wilson, right, and you're this weird character that does his workout on planes and has an entourage in a building, and he seems to be an unusual person to have to deal with as a quarterback, how do you react to that? To just getting eviscerated by your coach on what appears to be an overreaction to a specific moment, but is a building pent-up thing. Is that a positive? Do you I'm going to show him and come back next week looking great, or do you pout and go, I didn't deserve that?
I feel like with Russ, it doesn't work either way, because some people are motivated by that.
It's just noise.
We've had coworkers who, if they get called out for stuff, they just fold up and do worse.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So which is it for Russ? Or is it just none of it matters? It's irrelevant?
I think he's just the same guy. all the time.
Okay.
I don't think he's motivated either way. He's self-motivated.
Self-motivated.
Yeah. He's not motivated by. I mean, it's the complete opposite. Pete Carroll probably didn't yell at him like that.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a new experience.
It is. I mean, the interesting thing for the Broncos here is they were winning a bunch of games. I don't think it was because of Russ, but he was playing better, right?
Yeah.
He was making a couple good throws a game, and it was matching with what that defense was doing to the point where it's like, okay, are they going to give this another shot next year with Russ and not look elsewhere? And then if you see Peyton that upset, maybe they are going to move on. On the other side, Bailey Zappe's shown some signs of life as a starter, but still 3 turnover-worthy plays against Kansas City the other day. And when they were trying to pull this upset, he's given short fields to Mahomes and the Chiefs. That's not going to work. So Denver's dependent on those turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, and Zappe's giving opposing defenses opportunities to make some of those plays.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots' offense is miserable. Like, their defense is good. I think that should keep them in this game, and it comes down to whether or not Bailey Zappe gives the Broncos offense opportunities they can turn down, and just get away from the game gets away from them that way. And so far, it looks like that's going to happen more often than it's not. Ultimately, I think the Patriots can keep it within 7.
I'll take the Broncos to cover in Denver. I think Zappe's turnover-worthy plays catch up to them against Denver here, Christmas Eve night, while we're all waiting for Santa. 2 more games. Christmas Day, starting at 1 o'clock, Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 10. And so the Chiefs have the Raiders, the Bengals, and then the Chargers to finish the season. This is why, while that's happening, the Chiefs will be favored by 10 in this game, probably by a touchdown in the Bengals game.
Yeah.
Double digits in the Chargers game. The Chiefs, for all their flaws, have a pretty clean path to win out.
Yeah.
And the Ravens have tough games, and the Dolphins have tough games. The Chiefs have the number 1 seed. I think it's like a 15% chance that they get it, but man, they have an opportunity here to win out and maybe get that bye.
They do. I'm looking for that number right now, actually, the number 1 seed.
Last game, it was a 27-17. The Raiders hung tough. Remember, they got up 14-0. It was Aiden O'Connell's best game. And the Raiders are coming off this thrashing of the Chargers. Feels like they need more of that, right? They need to have this game. I mean, Kansas City's not going to turn it over the same way the Chargers did, but the Raiders, the way they played last time around, the defense wasn't great, but the offense did move the ball, and it was one of those, they hit high-leverage plays, right? They hit downfield throws. They hit the types of plays you need to beat the Chiefs if the Raiders are going to pull this upset on Christmas on the Nickelodeon game, by the way. Got a Nickelodeon.
That's still happening?
Yeah. I don't know if it's like Nickelodeon animation or if it's just watch the game with the slime and all that, but my kids are really excited.
Yeah.
They've been asking for the next Nickelodeon game. It's Christmas Day at 1.
Okay. That makes sense. The Chiefs are 11% to get the number 1 seed.
Yeah. I mean, off the top, I would calculate it closer to 20.
Okay.
In my head.
Cool.
I think it's closer to 20. They have an opportunity.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, like the Raiders are fresh off like a 40-point margin of victory, and they're underdogs by 10 points.
A week after they lost 3-0.
Yes. Yeah. Not a lot of logic happening, like a lot of transient property between the Raiders on a week-to-week basis. I mean, look, the story for the Chiefs has been the same all season long. Their defense is really good. They will probably cause that Raiders offense to have major problems. And then it's like, can they get out of their own way on offense? Can they stop making mistakes across the board? Can Kadarius Toney catch a football without Stickum? Can Mahomes last the game without blowing his top because other people keep screwing it up? I mean, the Raiders' defense has been better than people expected it to be. It's actually not a terrible group, but it comes down to Kansas City. Like, it's not a Raiders thing. It's like, can you stop making the mistakes you've made all season long?
Yeah.
That's it.
Last few weeks, again, Mahomes has played better, I think, than he played earlier in the year. He's actually on a pretty good stretch, and his numbers are horrible relative to the way he's played and expectations.
I mean, he's got a 90 grade this year.
Yeah. And a lot of that was running. One interesting dynamic for the Chiefs. Remember, early in the year, it felt like the best way that they moved the ball was Mahomes scrambling. He has not scrambled a lot at all in the second half of the year. And I don't know if he was a little banged up in one of the games, ankle or whatever it may have been. I don't know. He's not running as much as he was earlier in the year. It's just something to keep an eye on because I thought that was like their secret weapon early because the pass game was inconsistent. Chiefs are, I think it's 0-4 anytime they give up at least 21 points. 0-4 this year. That's their magic number. Don't give up more than 21, and they'll win the game. complete change from the early Mahomes era, right? Where it's like they were in a bunch of shootouts and he'd keep them going. Right now, it's a defense first type of team where as long as the offense doesn't, stays out of their own way, they should be able to win.
This is true for any Raiders game, but Max Crosby has a chance to really cause this offense problems.
He was real hurt last game.
Yeah.
He had one pressure. It was a late sack. He did not have any wins, but they doubled him a ton, too. They gave him a lot of attention.
Right, and they will, I think, this game again, because one-on-one, him against Juwan Taylor is a matchup that would go in Crosby's favor. Juwan Taylor's given up quite a lot of pressure this year. His big thing, though, is 18 penalties, which leads the league. And, you have that constant razor's edge between, is he too far off the line? Is he going too early? Are we going to flag it? Are we going to let it go? Like, he's dealing with that in addition to the fact that he probably can't block Max Crosby one-on-one. So, yeah, they're going to give a ton of attention to Crosby, which opens up space on the other side, right? Malcolm Kuntz, can he have a big game against, the left tackle for the Chiefs who won't be...
Wanye Morris, third-round rookie.
Right, who's not even as good probably as Juwan Taylor on the other side. It does start to open up ways where you say, there can be negative plays in this offense that are forced by the Raiders, in addition to the ones that the Chiefs are creating by dropping passes and not being where they're supposed to be. If they start copping holding calls, false starts, if there's sacks in there, it's very difficult to sack Mahomes. But if they're able to get him on the ground a couple of times, previous seasons wouldn't make a difference. The Chiefs' offense is able to overcome that, not an issue. This year's version, if you can insert some negative plays into that offense on top of the ones that are already there, you can stymie that group.
Yeah, the Raiders' defense has been sneaky good this year.
Yeah.
And again, I know a lot of it depends on who you play and everything, but very surprised that the Raiders have played this well. They haven't played as well against better teams, but they hung tough against Miami, and they did all right for half the game against the Chiefs last time around. So just something to keep an eye on if the Raiders can remain feisty on the defensive side of the ball without a ton of name talent and at least keep this close. Chiefs by 10 here, though. Where are you going to go?
Man, 10's a lot for this Chiefs offense that just doesn't look itself.
They won by 10 in the other matchup in Vegas.
Yeah. I don't like it. Don't like it.
Chiefs will not continue to make all those mistakes.
I'm going to go with the Raiders, keeping it within 10.
I'll take the Chiefs, covering the 10. On Christmas Day at 1, and then at 4:30, it's the Giants and the Eagles. Eagles are going to finish the game, the season. These two teams are going to play each other 2 out of the next 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Eagles favored by 12 here, and they haven't won in December. Tommy DeVito. So we haven't seen this matchup yet this year. The Eagles struggled a little bit with the Commanders, the lowly Commanders, who took them to the wire twice, including overtime once, when we thought the Eagles were better. Will the Giants be that type of division rival that just kind of makes life difficult for the Eagles, even though the Eagles most likely will pull the win off in the end here?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, right now, genuinely, we kind of joked earlier that the Eagles might just not be good. When you look at their record, that seems kind of silly, but recently they haven't been. I mean, it's not just been a similar story to what it was earlier in the season of, they weren't quite firing on all cylinders and yada yada. Like, they've actually not been good recently. So it's a real concern. I mean, the defense is getting gashed. The offense, I think, has been a bit too predictable in addition to just not being as good as it should have been. Their strategy against Seattle was very strange to me, where it looked like they could have just spent the entire game picking apart that zone defense and putting the ball in the seams and taking 10, 15 yards every single play. And then every time they went on a run of a few of those plays, they then went away from it, or they then got greedy and tried to take a big chunk play off the top of it instead of just taking that every time, if that's what's there. The other dynamic, obviously, in this particular matchup is this offense going up against Wink Martindale's blitz-happy defense, right? It's a very different blitz-happy defense to Flores and the Vikings, but it is very blitz-heavy. And so, Jalen Hurts against the blitz this season, he's been pretty good. And, obviously, given his rushing ability, it's a dangerous tactic as well, unless you're prepared to blitz and contain at the same time. I think, generally speaking, Jalen Hurts is not really a quarterback you want to blitz, but it's what the Giants do.
They scored 48 against the Giants last year when Hurts was the quarterback. Hurts played Week 18. It was 22-16, and then they I think they knew they might. Well, Hurts was coming back off injury, if I recall. He wasn't as good in that game, a little rusty. And then they played in the playoffs and just blew the doors off them.
Yeah.
The Eagles, 38-7. It wasn't even that close. So just something to keep an eye on. They've had more success than not, I would say, against Wink in that defense. See if Tommy DeVito can pull some of that magic. I mean, that's the other part too. DeVito.
Rough game for Cutlets last week.
It was. I mean, he got sacked 7 times, and Giants quarterbacks this year. I mean, how many times have they been sacked 7 or more times in a game? It's been a bunch. And so the Eagles' pass rush that has not been as good this year, is that because they're not blowing teams out, don't have as many opportunities, whatever it is, they're still good at winning one-on-ones relative to the rest of the league and should have opportunities to create 5, 6, 7 sacks in this game.
I mean, Cutlets is quietly alongside Sam Howell as like the most sack-attracted quarterback in the NFL. He has been sacked 35 times this season already. The guy's barely played. He is not just that, but he is converting 39% of pressured plays into sacks, which is just like a mind-blowingly high number. I mean, these are the numbers Sam Howell had earlier in the year where you're like, what is happening here? Howell has reduced those a little bit, but Cutlets is still right up there.
Yeah. Giants have a tough time blocking up front. So DeVito's going to have to play a special game.
The 2 quarterbacks with the highest rate of pressure converted into sacks are both Giants quarterbacks. It's DeVito at 39 and then Daniel Jones at 31.6.
Tyrod, who's usually not good at that, was the best of that trio. Philly's offense, I still can't really figure them out, right? They used to have every answer last year. They had games where it was the run game, it was the pass game, it was deep passes, it was short passes. They had all the answers. They don't have them this year. I think it's still on the team, though. They're still there. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are still healthy. Dallas Goedert's back, and Hurts is still good, and they could still run it. And all the answers are still there, but the Eagles have to spend these next 3 weeks figuring out what their identity is. I mean, they have to figure out some of those answers here.
Cutlets is tied for the 5th most sacked quarterback in the NFL this season.
It's impressive. He should be getting sponsorship. Should be like insurance agencies or something.
He's been sacked the same number of times as C.J. Stroud in half the games.
He's gonna be bloated off the 7 fishes too from Christmas Eve. You have the nice big Italian meal and 7 fishes. It's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah.
That's Christmas Eve. Christmas Day could slow him down a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't feel like optimal pregame nutrition.
You got to do it. It's you got to do what the family's doing. You know, it's the tradition.
Yeah.
You know, Tommy's gonna have the 7 fishes Christmas Eve, no matter what.
Right. I'm gonna
pick a game.
I'm gonna take Philadelphia to cover, and then just before we get out of here and stop this show, I'm gonna regret asking this, but what is the 7 fishes?
It's not. I don't think it's specific. You just have to have 7.
You just have to have 7 different fish.
Yeah. I never really did it, but my cousin Jeff, he would always do it.
Yeah.
We'd have like octopus and squid and lobster, of course, as I told you, was our main.
Yeah.
Let me text Jeff and see what his 7 are, and I'll get back to you.
All right. 7's quite a lot of different fish.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's not easy.
What did we have? Octopus, squid.
It's like
calamari. We'd have some calamari.
That is squid.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You're right. I'm sorry. It's the same name.
It's like where you hear these, like seven meat stews, and you start thinking, you gotta go some to get to 7. It's a lot of different animals.
I don't know. I'm only 75% Italian, so I'm missing some of those.
That's true.
Some of the fishes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so programming note, we won't be here Christmas morning. That's Monday morning, so we won't be doing Monday 7 a.m. We'll be doing Tuesday at 7 a.m. Day after Christmas. Boxing Day show. Live.
Boxing Day.
Stephen's Day. We'll recap all the Week 16 action starting Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, sharp. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Week 16. So Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the holiday. And we'll see you again Tuesday morning with more PFF NFL Podcast.